Chapter 938. The wind was gentle and the mountains were beautiful. On the side of the waterfall in the canyon, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. His whole body was roaring, and he was bathed in a layer of dreamy light. For Lin Sun, he had gained a lot in this Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. First, he mastered the Supreme Tao, refining Star River with fire, comprehended the Great Way of Fire, and then broke through in the Extreme Realm and obtained the Great Way Infinite Bottle. Floating on the sea, he broke through to the middle realm of reincarnation, developing, lighting the soul lamp. His soul broke through and stepped into the divine flower gathering head level, comprehending the Tao in the steel forest, peeping into the mystery of the spiritual vein, and mastering the rare Great Way of Star Obliteration in front of the Taoist altar. He listened to the Sanskrit sound of the Great Way, verified with many peerless ways of Tao, comprehended and perfected his own way of Tao, and understood the essence of the three ways of Tao, until he set foot on the top of the Taoist altar and fought with Yu Linkong. Lin Sun comprehended a lot in the battle after experiencing a difficult and dangerous bloody battle. All these gains and insights were absolutely a rare and great fortune. Even if he didn't get the Great Way Infinite Bell, Lin Sun had no regrets. When these insights and gains are completely turned into my own, I can easily reach the perfection of reincarnation developing realm. Lin Sun had a strong confidence in his heart. When that time came, it meant that he had set foot on the top of the 5 realms of cultivation and could be called the perfection of the 5 realms. And the next step was to transcend the king realm above the 5 realms. The mysterious woman in the heaven accessing place once said that within 3 years, the great era will come. If I want to seek an unprecedented way of reaching the extinction king realm in the Great Era War, I have to cultivate myself to the highest level. As long as there is no accident, the time should be enough. While healing his injuries, Lin Sun meditated and pondered. 2 hours later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. His injuries were completely healed, and even his cultivation had improved a lot. His strength was surging like an abyss. Swish! As his black eyes opened and closed, cold light surged like an abyss. It was so frightening that the nearby void seemed to be unable to bear it and wailed. Bai Lingshi had already woken up from meditation. She was dressing in front of the waterfall and changing her blood-stained white clothes. When she noticed that Lin Sun had woken up, she couldn't help marveling in her heart. At the same time, Lin Sun was also stunned. At this moment, Bai Lingshi was dressed in a snow-white robe that was spotless. Her face was bright and beautiful, not as pale as before. Her fine black hair had just been combed and was slightly damp. It was casually coiled behind her head, giving her a lazy and refreshing aura. As she stood there, her figure was like a lotus, her clothes fluttered in the wind, her features were picturesque, and she was beautiful to the point of being fresh and extraordinary. Bai came to her. Bai. Bai Lin. Lin. And. Ling Sun of. Bai of. Lin Sun was stunned. Then he realized that she was talking about Shia Solstice. But Shia Solstice was not as exaggerated as she said. The two of them chatted as they flew into the distance. On the way, Lin found a demon beast that resided in the mountains, and he found out after asking it about it that it was the Pearl Mountain Range. It was situated at the southwest area of the Grand Qin province, and it was a few tens of thousands of kilometers away from Dark Parasol Mountain. The Tao Discussion Lantern gathering should have ended by now, said Bai Lingshi. Lin Sun nodded. That was for sure. The only problem he had to worry about was whether there would be enemies looking for him after discovering that he was missing. For those ancient orthodoxies, it would be extremely easy for them to find a person. They would be able to find him just by relying on the aura he left behind. As soon as Lin Sun thought of this, he noticed something unusual. Under the cover of his divine sense, there was a group of figures flashing over on divine rays of light in the distant sky. Their speed was not fast, and they seemed to be searching for something along the way as they patrolled the mountains. It's them. Lin soon narrowed his eyes. After his spiritual power reached the level of divine flower gathering in acupoint, it became more magical than before. Even if he was far away, he could still clearly see several old acquaintances among the group of figures. Shai Yutong, Zhuo Quanglan and Qing Lianer. And beside them, there were big shots with extremely powerful auras. There were Black Jade Dragon Elephant, Cyan Luan, White Jade Thunder Lion. It was shocking. That old hooligan really guessed right. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun and Bai Lingshi used the qi cultivation method to hide their figures and suddenly disappeared on the spot. Here. Not long after, a group of practitioners came over with a murderous aura. The power they exuded made all the creatures in the mountains tremble and crawl on the ground. I finally found him. This place has the aura of that guy. Shai Yutong shouted excitedly in front of the waterfall in the canyon. Yes, he stayed here for a period of time, and according to the judgment of the Shenluo needle, he should have left not long ago. Zhuo Quanglan's expression was gloomy. He held an octagonal white tortoise shell in his hand. The surface of the tortoise shell was intertwined with golden threads and converged into a mysterious pattern. In the center of the pattern, a thin and mysterious black needle was suspended, buzzing and trembling. "Are you sure?" Qing Lianer asked. Her beautiful face was ghastly pale and translucent while her aura was extremely weak. She seemed as if she was on the verge of death, but her expression was extremely resentful. When the Tao discussion lantern meeting ended and she heard that Lin Sun had escaped, she almost gnashed her teeth with hatred. So, she didn't hesitate to participate in the operation to pursue and kill Lin Sun. She wanted to see how Lin Sun would be crushed with her own 2 eyes. There were over 10 half-step king realm existences that had come with her this time, and a portion of them were from the Azure Phoenix clan, Ascension Sword sect, Jade Void Temple, Zhongli clan, and various other ancient sections. All of them had come for the sake of revenge. The other portion of half-step king realm existences purely wanted to kill Lin Sun and seize the fortune he possessed. Their origins were complicated. Some were independent cultivators that ran amok in an area, and some were great figures from other great powers. So, Qing Lianer was very sure that if they were able to find Lin Sun's tracks this time, then Lin Sun was bound to be unable to escape calamity. This kid is really extraordinary. He was actually able to escape from the Tao discussion lantern meeting in advance. This is something that has never happened in the past. A great figure sighed with emotion. Humph. No matter how extraordinary he is, he's heavily injured, and the only thing he has to fear is that mysterious young woman by his side. If it wasn't for that, why would all of us have to make a move against him? The Black Jade Dragon Elephant spoke with a rumbling voice. Its enormous body that was like a mountain lay across space, and it emanated a terrifying, oppressive feeling. There's no time to lose. Quickly make a move. After the Tao discussion lantern meeting this time, countless people have set their sights on Fiend God Lin. It isn't just us, numerous other great figures have made a move as well, and they're searching for that kid's whereabouts. At a time like this, we absolutely can't allow others to beat us to the punch. The White Jade Lightning Lion from Jade Void Temple roared loudly and was extremely anxious. Everyone was shocked as they realized the severity of the problem. Perhaps it wasn't a problem to kill Lin Sun, but if they wanted to be the first to kill him, then they had to make every second count and seize the initiative before the others. Let's go. Without any delay, they took action right away. Are you going to fight back? Bai Lingshi asked in astonishment as she stood in front of an extraordinarily beautiful mountain surrounded by clouds and mist. When they arrived here, Lin Sun didn't flee. Instead, he took out many formation flags and started to get busy, and his figure flickered near the mountain from time to time. Obviously, he was setting up a formation. Don't you see? They intend to fight to the death. If we don't kill them, more similar things will happen in the future. Lin Sun didn't look back as he spoke while he was busy. He had a set of Qingwei forbidden formation in his hand, which was seized from Qing Lianer, but he hadn't put it to use until now. But now, he decided to make a big move. Speaking of it, he had been targeted and suppressed by many so-called peerless figures at the Tao Discussion Lantern meeting, and he hadn't gone to settle accounts with them one by one. On the contrary, they had mobilized a large number of people to hunt him down. This was too much of a bully. The mountain in front of him contained rich spiritual marrow veins, and it was the best place for Lin Sun to set up a formation with the wind-mocking pupil. Most importantly, with the support of the spirit marrow vein in the mountain, he didn't have to exhaust any more spirit marrow to completely activate this King Tao restriction formation. Is it really possible? Bai Lingshi was a little worried. Don't forget that I'm also a spiritual tattoo guru. Lin Sun laughed. If I don't kill them all, my attainments in spiritual tattoos will be in vain. Bai Lingshi suddenly smiled, thinking of some sensational things Lin Sun had done in Xiao Empire in those years, and she felt relieved. She even looked forward to the appearance of those enemies soon. Buzz! Before long, the whole mountain suddenly emerged a wave of obscure and mysterious restriction. The brilliance flickered like a tide, and the momentum soared to the sky. It was extraordinary. It's done. Holding the formation plate in one hand, Lin Sun made a gesture with the other hand. Suddenly, all the strange phenomena presented by the mountain disappeared and returned to its previous appearance. Not even a trace of restriction could be found. Bai Lingshi praised in her heart that Lin Sun's attainments in spiritual tattoos were much better than those of Qing Lianer and others. When they used this formation to deal with Lin Sun on the ancient path green lamp tree, there was no such magical movement and strange phenomena. Let's go. Lin Sun wiped off the sweat on his forehead and felt relieved. Then he walked into the depths of the mountain with Bai Lingshi. In order to set up this formation and give full play to its power, he had spent a lot of effort and strength just now. But the result was satisfactory. Now all he had to do was to wait for the enemy to enter the net. Right here. This time he didn't escape, but hid in the mountain. This is the best time for us to kill him. Before long, Qing Lianer, Zhuo Quanglan, Shai Yutong and a group of half-step King Realm experts arrived here like an overwhelming dark cloud. Chapter 939. When they arrived here, there was no need for Zhuo Quanglan to guide them with Shenluo needle. They saw Lin Sun at a glance. On the edge of the cliff halfway up the mountain, under a vigorous old pine, Lin Sun stood with his hands behind his back. The mountain wind blew his clothes, making him look ethereal. Everyone was stunned when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would show up so openly. Lin Sun, are you waiting for death because you know you have nowhere to run? Shai Yutong shouted excitedly with resentment in his eyes. He was humiliated and discredited by Lin Sun on the shore of the floating sea. No, I'm waiting to send you on your way. Lin Sun replied in a carefree and calm manner, causing those experts to be surprised and bewildered, and they were slightly uncertain. Don't pretend to be mysterious. If you are not afraid, why did you run just now? Shai Yutong scolded disdainfully. He felt very happy, like a turtle in a jar, and he was about to get his revenge. The other strong people were looking around cautiously, worried that there was a trap, although they were sure that they could easily kill Lin Sun with their strength. But they didn't dare to be careless. Lin Sun had shown his fierce power at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, and he had a holy treasure in his hand, so they had to be cautious. Lin Sun, let the girl come out. You are at the end of your rope now. Why are you still hiding? A big shot said indifferently. I alone am enough to kill you. Lin Sun looked down, and his tone became colder. Seniors, please take action. This boy is obviously playing tricks and deliberately stalling for time, Shai Yutong shouted. Wait, listen to me. Suddenly, a big shot stood up. It was a gray-robed old man with exquisite eyes. He looked at Lin Sun from afar and said, "Young man, if you can hand over the holy treasure in your hand, I promise I can fight for a chance of survival for you." Everyone was agitated and quite dissatisfied. But when they recognized the old man, they were all awestruck and didn't dare to say anything. This was a renowned independent cultivator elder of the Westworld, and he called himself Scholar Clifftop. His cultivation was unfathomable, and he'd stepped foot into the half-step king realm a very long time ago. "Lin Sun, you have seen the current situation clearly. If you take this opportunity to hand over all your treasures, I can also fight for a chance for you to survive." A white-haired old woman with a long and narrow face spoke, causing the others to feel displeased. However, because this old woman's origin was even more frightening than Householder Cliff's, they could only endure it silently. "Two old idiots, you still don't know when you're about to die." Lin Sun laughed and said bluntly. In an instant, Householder Cliffs and the white-haired old woman were so angry that their faces turned green. Killing intent surged out of them. As for the other experts, they had a strange expression on their faces. At this point in time, Fiend Celestial Lin still dared to be so overbearing and arrogant. Who gave him the courage? The more fearless Lin Sun was, the more uncertain they were. Some thought he was deliberately mystifying and stalling for time, and some thought he was desperate because he knew he was going to die. Some even wondered if Lin Sun had gone mad. After all, any normal person would not be so indifferent at such a critical moment of life and death. However, time was of the essence, and they didn't have time to think too much. Next, some people walked forward, intending to climb the mountain. The atmosphere suddenly became tense, and a murderous aura pervaded the air. A storm was brewing. "You should have done this long ago." Shai Yutong, Zhuo Quanglan, and Qing Lianer all stared at Lin Sun with cold eyes, eager to see how he would be killed. "Young man, I've given you a chance, but you don't cherish it. Why bother?" Householder Clifftop paced calmly and confidently. "Lin Sun, why don't you come with me? You're a peerless figure in this world. Wouldn't it be a pity if you died like this?" The white-haired old woman said indifferently, with an indisputable, domineering, and extremely frightening tone. How could the other big shots just watch Lin Sun be killed by others? One by one, they moved out, scrambling to be the first, for fear that Lin Sun's treasures would be snatched by others if they were a step slower. Seeing this, Lin Sun was as calm as ever. His dark eyes were deep and cold, without a trace of emotion. He looked at those experts as if they were a group of dead people. At the same time, Lin Sun noticed that some of the practitioners were still standing there, hesitating. Suddenly, Lin Sun showed a vigilant and nervous look, which was seen by other practitioners as a sign of panic and lack of confidence. "Look, this guy's been exposed. He's starting to get scared." Shai Yutong laughed sarcastically. "Lin Sun, keep pretending. Why are you suddenly scared?" Qing Lianer and Zhuo Quanglan also keenly noticed the change in Lin Sun's facial expression. They immediately calmed down and no longer had any worries. Even he, Demon God Lin, was no different in the face of death. At the same time, those big shots who wanted to act first also quickened their pace. If they didn't have scruples about each other, they would have acted first. "Lin Sun, I'm a man of my word. It's not too late for you to change your mind." The white-haired old woman looked amiable, but her voice was threatening. "But if you continue to hesitate, there will be no turning back." She took a step forward and climbed up the mountain lightly. Lin Sun sneered in his heart. This old woman was so hateful. She thought she could easily control him and threatened him, but she didn't know that she was already in a desperate situation. If he hadn't planned to kill them all at once, Lin Sun would have started a massacre. "Young man, the opportunity is fleeting. I hope you don't make a mistake. Otherwise, you're doomed to lose your life." Although Recluse Clifftop looked calm and confident, his pace was actually faster than anyone else. It seemed that he wanted to be the first to kill Lin Sun. Although the other big shots didn't say anything, They were also approaching Lin Sun from different directions. At this time, those experts who were guarding where they were couldn't hold back anymore. They couldn't tolerate Lin Sun being killed by others. Suddenly, the white jade lightning lion roared loudly. "It's just killing a heavily injured little bastard. Why is there a need to go through so much trouble? Get out of the way!" Boom! It soared into the sky and struck out a huge claw. Thunderstorms surged and condensed into a huge claw that covered the sky. Then, it smashed down on the mountain. All of a sudden, the sky changed color and the void became chaotic. This was a strike from a half-step king realm expert, which could easily wipe out the mountains and rivers. Lin Sun's heart tightened. If he was hit by this strike, the formation he had set up in advance would be completely exposed, and his plan to kill them all at once would be ruined. "How dare you? Do you want to snatch the treasure in front of me? Don't even think about it." However, there was someone who was even more anxious than Lin Sun. The white-haired old woman and Hermit Cliffside were enraged, and they attacked first to neutralize the attack of the white jade thunder lion. They had actually helped Lin Sun imperceptibly. At the same time, they quickened their pace and rushed to the mountainside. In the past, they could reach this distance in a blink of an eye. But today, for some reason, the higher they went up the mountain, the farther it seemed. At first, they didn't pay much attention to it. They thought that it was just a camouflage Lin Sun had set up. But soon, their expressions changed as they sensed that something was wrong. However, they had no choice but to charge forward. Moreover, they took it for granted that even if there was an ambush, they would be able to resolve it easily with their skills. Seeing this, the bigwigs who had been guarding where they were could not wait any longer. They rushed out with all their might. Since the attack of the white jade thunder lion had been resolved by others, it was obvious that if they did not rush over, they would not be able to seize the initiative. "Finally, you're all here." Lin Sun smiled, a cold light surging in his black eyes. "This guy, he can still smile?" Shai Yutong's eyes widened as he gnashed his teeth. "He really doesn't know what's good for him. I've never seen someone as arrogant as him." Zhuo Quanglan and Qing Lianer's expressions turned ugly as well. At this moment, Lin Sun had suddenly become extremely calm and his smile was bright. There was no panic, helplessness, or despair on his face. This was unacceptable to them and made them feel depressed. They wanted to witness the whole process of Lin Sun's death with their own eyes. They did not want to see this. "Little guy, I've already given you a chance. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. Don't blame me for being ruthless." The white-haired old woman was finally the first to arrive. As she spoke, she rushed out without hesitation and grabbed at Lin Sun with her fingers like lightning. How could she not be anxious? Seeing that the others had already arrived, she did not want any accidents to happen at this critical juncture. "Old idiot, I should be the one to send you on your way." It was also at this moment that Lin Sun stretched out his hands from behind his back. The formation plate in his hands that had been accumulating power for a long time buzzed at this moment. Boom! The shadow of a fiery red vermilion bird appeared out of thin air. Its bright red wings flapped and thousands of dazzling flames sprinkled down, enveloping the white-haired old woman who was rushing over. Caught off guard, the white-haired old woman let out a howl. She was originally very confident and domineering, but now she jumped 3 feet high and screamed as miserably as a pig being slaughtered. Suddenly, her image was ruined and she looked very embarrassed. The shadow of the vermilion bird dashed out while a rain of flames drifted down. All of them were formed from obscure King Dao restrictions, and they possessed boundlessly terrifying destructive force. In an instant, the white-haired old woman was enveloped in a sea of flames. She leaped and leaped with the intention of struggling free, yet it was utterly impossible. She was trapped within the sea of flames and emitted miserable cries that sounded like ghosts and howls. Everyone was astounded and flabbergasted. That's a renowned half-step king realm expert. How could she suddenly encounter misfortune? Isn't her cry a little too miserable? But in next to no time, Their expressions changed drastically as they had a bad premonition, and their bodies went cold. Could it be that this was a trap that had been carefully prepared a long time ago? Many experts retreated decisively. They wanted to retreat and assess the situation, but it was already too late. Lin Sun had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and it was time to draw the net, so he naturally wouldn't allow anyone to escape. He activated the formation plate and activated the King Dao restriction formation that covered the entire mountain with its full strength. In an instant, this expanse of the heavens and the earth changed abruptly. Mist covered the sky while murderous intent surged out, and dense restrictions and markings that covered the heavens and the earth surged out like a tide and flickered with a terrifying and dangerous light. P.S. May 1st, the first day of the month. Ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket from the children. Chapter 940. Bang. The sky was covered in flickering obscure spirit markings that were dense like the tide, and they emanated dazzling divine radiance. For a time, the mountain that could only be considered to be extraordinary actually seemed to have awoken from its slumber, and it erupted with a vast and brilliant aura that threw the wind and clouds into disorder and illuminated the world. On the other hand, it was a completely different scene when one was within it. Some areas were like a world of flames and lava. It was an expanse of fiery red, and surging waves of heat surged. The image of a vermilion bird spread its wings and emitted clear cries that incinerated the heavens and the earth. Some areas were vast and powerful. The heavens and the earth seemed desolate, and there was an oppressive aura. An azure dragon that was an entire 30 kilometers long coiled around it, and its roar shook the 9 heavens. Some areas were pitch black, and killing intent pressed down like dark clouds. An extremely terrifying white tiger opened its cold and indifferent eyes, and its killing intent shook the surroundings. On the other hand, there was a black tortoise in another area. Its 4 legs were like pillars that could hold up the heavens, and every single step it took caused space to collapse and the earth to sink. It was too terrifying. The 4 poles of the heavens and the earth had completely become a scene of doomsday. Everyone's souls trembled, and they were terrified to the point their entire bodies went cold. They'd been tricked. What was supposed to be an ordinary mountain had turned into such a terrifying scene in an instant. It was obvious that this was a premeditated ambush. Many experts didn't hesitate to flee, but they noticed that they couldn't escape at all. This was a King Dao restriction formation. Especially when it was set up by Lin Sun on the spirit vein of the mountain, it communicated with the might of the heavens and the earth, and its might was even more extraordinary. The white-haired old woman was still letting out shrill cries. Her voice was extremely shrill, and it caused one's hair to stand on end. Her body was drowned in the blazing sea of flames, yet she was unable to struggle free and was being refined. One could clearly see that her clothes, skin, hair, and body had been charred, and she was like a piece of coal. It was a horrifying sight. Motherfucker! This is a restriction formation. We've all been tricked by that demon god Lin. An expert roared furiously with rage. Actually, there was no need for any explanation because all the cultivators present had realized this. But no one had expected that Lin Sun, who'd clearly been heavily injured by the Hall of Longevity during the Tao Discussion Lantern Conference and had almost died, would possess the ability to set up such a terrifying formation. Damn it! Many people's faces were cloudy and filled with regret. They finally understood why Lin Sun was so calm and composed before, and even clamored to send them all to hell. At that time, they were disdainful and thought that Lin Sun was deliberately deceiving them. But obviously they were all wrong. He was gravely mistaken. This caused their intestines to almost turn green with regret, and all of their expressions were extremely unsightly. Before, they were so confident and disdainful. They regarded Lin Sun as a fish on the anvil, and scrambled to kill him and seize the holy treasures in his hands. But now, they were so regretful and angry that they almost cursed out loud. Little bastard! I'll definitely burn your bones and scatter your ashes once I escape. At the other side, Scholar Clifftop was letting out a shrill cry as well. He was suppressed in the area where the Black Tortoise Phantom was and was being suppressed. The Black Tortoise Phantom's gigantic foot stomped down, almost crushing his body. Everyone was astounded once more. Like the white-haired old woman, Scholar Clifftop was also an extremely powerful half-step King Realm practitioner. But now he was trapped in the formation and was also suffering a disaster. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't get out of it. It was so horrible. Old idiot, you're greedy and want to do evil things. Now that you're in trouble, you resent me. Don't you have any shame? Lin Sun's indifferent and cold voice sounded in the formation. At this time, Lin Sun was controlling the forbidden formation of Kingwei with neat and skillful movements. He vividly demonstrated the foundation and attainments of a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos. Rumble, the power of the formation became more and more terrible, and it roared like thunder. Little friend, I apologize to you. I only ask that you be magnanimous and let me go. In another area, the white jade thunder lion from Yushu Temple was wailing. Unfortunately, he fell into the pitch-black area and was being killed by the white tiger phantom. The white tiger was in charge of slaughter, and it was boundlessly terrifying. Its sharp claws descended with killing intent that was like a sword, and it struck the white jade lightning lion to the point its body was covered in scars that were deep enough to see bone. Fresh blood flowed out like a waterfall, and it was an extremely miserable sight. At this time, the other powerhouses were also in danger. Some of the weaker ones had already been wiped out and turned into ashes. I can let you go, but you have to offer your soul and be my mount to atone for your sins. What do you think? Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. Don't even think about it. The Wit Jade Lightning Lion was furious, and its eyes almost split apart from rage. He was the mountain-guarding beast of Sky Void Temple and possessed the might of a half-step King Realm expert. Yet now, he was taken as a mount by a junior, and this was an extraordinary humiliation that was absolutely impossible to accept. Then you can wait for your death. Lin Sun's voice was cold. He didn't mean it. What he said just now was to humiliate the lion. To be honest, if the lion surrendered and agreed to be his mount, he wouldn't be happy. It was only an old lion at the half-step King Realm. Even if he didn't rely on this formation, he would be able to kill it. Even if he kept it as a mount, it didn't have any potential to be unearthed. Demon God Lin, there's no enmity between us. Please show mercy. I'll surely compensate you with sufficient sincerity. Little animal, you'll suffer calamity sooner or later for bullying others like this. Damn it! Damn it! Within the formation, shrill cries, begging, howling. All sorts of sounds resounded incessantly. It was like purgatory, and the scene was horrifying. A portion of the practitioners had already been obliterated and transformed into ash. There was also a portion of practitioners that were struggling and unwilling to suffer calamity and die. This is the ancestral formation of your Azure Phoenix clan. Could it be that you don't have a way to deal with it? A black jade dragon elephant howled. Its body was enormous like a mountain and possessed terrifying might. But at this moment it had unfortunately fallen into the area where the Azure Dragon Phantom resided. Compared to the Azure Dragon Phantom, it was like a tiny worm, and it was suppressed to the point its bones and tendons were broken while its flesh and blood flew in all directions. It was an extremely horrifying sight. This formation is indeed from my clan, but it's a true King Path restriction formation after all. So, we're powerless to escape once we fall into it. A Azure Phoenix struggled with all its might within the sea of flames. Just as the Black Jade Dragon form had said, this formation came from their Azure Phoenix clan, but it was precisely because of this that it felt despair. Because it was too clearly aware of how terrifying this formation was, and even King Realm experts would suffer calamity upon entering it. When it thought about how the treasure of their Azure Phoenix clan had been utilized by Lin Sun to suppress them, it caused the Azure Phoenix clan to feel extremely humiliated and aggrieved, and it was on the verge of going mad. The hearts of the other experts went cold when they heard it, and they felt extreme resentment and despair. A horrifying shrill cry resounded. The white-haired old woman was completely refined. Her body was incinerated by the surging sea of flames and transformed into ash, and not even her bones were left behind. It wasn't long before Scholar Clifftop was unable to hold on any longer, and he was slapped flying by the black tortoise phantom. His body exploded into pieces in midair, causing a rain of blood to spray out. When they witnessed this horrifying scene, the other experts were terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies, and they almost went mad. They started to beg for mercy and wailed with grief as they asked Lin Sun to spare their lives. There were even some that swore that they would absolutely not go against Lin Sun. However, at this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be extremely merciless and cold, and he remained silent. While he was on Dark Parasol Mountain, he'd been targeted by the peerless figures of the younger generation from the powers these people belonged to, and he'd suffered ceaselessly from them and suffered provocation. If his resources and reserves weren't sufficiently formidable, then he would have been killed countless times. Yet now, all these fellows that could be considered as great figures in West Heaven region had disregarded their status at all, and they'd mobilized a large force to pursue him with the intention of taking his life and seizing his saint artifact. How could anyone endure this? It wasn't long before the White Jade Thunder Lion died. Its body had been slashed into numerous pieces by the White Tiger Phantom, and it was mangled. After that, the Black Jade Dragon Elephant died as well. It was directly smashed into pieces by the Azure Dragon Phantom, and its death was the most unsightly. At this moment, the king's four symbols formation revealed terrifying might that could shake the heavens and the earth and make the gods weep. In the distance, Shai Yutong was dumbfounded as if he'd been struck by lightning. He screamed like a madman, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" He'd mobilized a large force to come here, but they were directly wiped out. This blow was too great for him to accept. On the other side, Zhuo Quanglan's vision also darkened, and he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Even so, he hadn't been able to kill Lin Sun. Instead, he'd been taken advantage of by Lin Sun to almost annihilate them. This almost made him collapse. The one who suffered the most was Qing Lianer. Her eyes widened, and her whole body trembled with anger. She screamed, He's too shameless and despicable. He actually used the ancestral formation of my Cyan Phoenix clan to do such a thing." What? At the end of her words, she actually coughed up a mouthful of blood under the attack of anger. Her originally extremely weak body was on the verge of collapse, and her face was ashen. They'd come to witness Lin Sun's death with their own eyes, so they hadn't participated in the operation. But when they saw this scene from afar, it brought an unbearable blow to their hearts. "Everyone, let me send you on your way." At this moment, Bai Lingshi's graceful figure appeared in the field. Her clothes were whiter than snow, and she was holding a Taoist sword that shone like silver frost. Suddenly, Shai Yutong and the others woke up from their anger and resentment. "Bai Lingshi, we're all from the Empire, and your Bai family has a lot of relations with our Xie family. Are you going to help the evildoer?" Shai Yutong was furious. "I'm not helping the evildoer. I'm helping your Xie family to get rid of the scourge, so as not to bring disaster to your family in the future." As she spoke, Bai Lingshi's figure flashed, and she directly attacked. "If Lin Sun were here, I might have some scruples. But you alone don't deserve to talk big like this." Zhuo Quanglan snorted coldly and rushed out to deal with Bai Lingshi with Shai Yutong. "Kill him quickly, or it'll be too late to leave when Lin Sun arrives." Qing Lianer was anxious. However, as soon as she finished speaking, a broken blade that was jade white like snow and seemed almost illusory suddenly descended from the sky, and it slashed down at an inconceivable speed. Puff! Qing Lianer, who was already extremely weak, had no time to dodge. Her head was cut off and blood spilled on the spot. Chapter 941. Lin Sun attacked with the broken blade. This was Lin Sun's means. With his current spiritual power, he could do more than one thing at a time. The broken blade was also a magic weapon, which could be controlled by his spiritual power. It was a piece of cake for him to kill enemies from a distance. For Lin Sun, he hated Shai Yutong, Qing Lianer, and Zhuo Quanglan most. They had a deep grudge against each other. If he didn't take this opportunity to kill them all, they would bring him more trouble in the future. Puff! Without any accident, Zhuo Quanglan, the future leader of Feather Sword sect, was killed on the spot after a while. As for Shai Yutong, Lin Sun didn't kill him in the end. Shai Yutong, who had been desperate, opened his eyes wide. He couldn't believe that Lin Sun would let him go at this time. Then, Lin Sun's indifferent and cold voice sounded in his ears. "Don't forget what I said at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival." Shai Yutong was furious and his face turned pale. He finally understood that Lin Sun didn't kill him because of his conscience, but because he had another purpose. "I'll let you see how I rise in the ancient desolation realm and how I fight for the Tao step by step. And you are destined to be a poor bug, living in my shadow for the rest of your life." How could Shai Yutong forget these words? To him, this was undoubtedly the greatest humiliation and contempt. For a moment, Shai Yutong's eyes were full of resentment and fear. He was so angry that his mind went blank and he stood there in a daze. Bai Lingshi was dazed for a second. She shook her head helplessly and said to herself, "The Xie family is one of the top 7 aristocratic families in the empire." Back then, Shai Yutong was so proud and unyielding. Who would have thought that he was no longer who he used to be in the ancient desolation realm? With that, she turned around and left without looking at Shai Yutong. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed, and then he sighed softly. Almost at the same time, the Qingwei Forbidden formation that covered the whole mountain buzzed, and the power it emitted fell sharply. Its brilliance dimmed, and the spiritual tattoos dissipated. In the blink of an eye, the formation disappeared like smoke. The reason was extremely simple. The energy of the spirit marrow vein beneath the mountain had already been completely extracted and transformed into waste, so it was unable to provide energy for the King Dao restriction formation any longer. The formation disappeared, revealing the true appearance of the mountain. A thick smell of blood instantly spread out, choking the nostrils. Every single area of the mountain range was covered in shattered corpses, scarlet-red pools of blood, and broken treasures. It could be said to be covered in blood and a mess. The entire mountain was dyed a terrifying blood-red color. This was the result of the Royal Dao Forbidden Array's might. Some of the experts were directly turned into ashes, not even leaving a trace in the world. At this time, the mountain wind whistled, and only a dozen or so experts were still alive. They stood in different areas, and their bodies were more or less stained with blood. They gasped for breath, and their faces were full of shock. They found it hard to believe that they were lucky enough to escape the calamity. They thought they were dreaming, and only after a long time did they dare to confirm that it was real. Lin. In an instant, they shot their gazes towards the edge of the cliff halfway up the mountain in unison. Lin Sun was standing beneath a strong and ancient pine tree, and his figure was tall, graceful, and composed. Different from before, these strong men looked at Lin Sun with resentment, hatred, and anger in their eyes, but more than that, there was a kind of fear from the heart. Just now, it was precisely this young man who seemed harmless in appearance that had meticulously set up a Royal Dao Forbidden Array and trapped a few tens of half-step King Realm experts to death. This was too shocking and terrifying, and it was sufficient to make any expert tremble in fear. If news of this were to spread, it would surely cause a commotion in the entire Westlake region, and many ancient sects would probably be unable to sit still. But why did Lin Sun let them go at the last moment? What did he intend to do? Question after question surged into the hearts of these experts. They'd just suffered such a huge loss and had just escaped from death, and it caused them to be filled with fear and vigilance towards Lin Sun. They utterly didn't dare rashly take revenge, as they were worried that they would be tricked again. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun didn't say anything, nor did he express anything in the slightest before turning around and leaving with Bai Lingshi. Swoosh! The vast universe arc flashed lightly before it traversed the clouds and vanished into the distance. He's leaving just like that. He's actually still alive. Those experts were stunned, and they practically didn't dare believe their eyes. But in next to no time they came to an understanding. Swoosh! 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 Extremely ear-piercing sounds of the air being torn apart suddenly resounded from extremely far away in the sky. Numerous streaks flashed through the sky like divine rays of light, and they were dazzling and resplendent as they rushed over here at full speed. It was a group of cultivators, and there were a few tens of them. All of them had a menacing and murderous aura. When they witnessed this scene, how could those remaining experts in the surroundings not understand that demonic god Lin wasn't being soft-hearted, and it was instead because he'd noticed in advance that a large group of formidable enemies was approaching? That demonic god Lin is definitely nearby. Someone cried out loudly with excitement in the distance. That's... But when they approached the mountain, the pupils of these experts constricted while they gasped in unison. The mountain was dyed red with blood and covered in corpses. Obviously, an extremely horrifying battle had occurred here. When they found out the ins and outs of this matter, the group of experts that were originally rushing over in a menacing manner stiffened, and their expressions changed greatly while cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. This was too terrifying. If they arrived here a step earlier, wouldn't they encounter such a calamity as well? Not long after, another group of experts flashed over from the other side of the sky, and their objective was the same. They'd come to pursue and kill Lin Sun. But in next to no time, their hearts turned cold and they were extremely horrified. Who could have imagined that demonic god Lin relied on a royal way forbidden formation to trap and kill dozens of half-step king realm existences? Amongst the younger generation of Shiheng world, demonic god Lin can be said to be the number one. A great figure side with emotion with a complicated expression. It's only been less than a year since he came from the mortal world, yet he's already stirred up a storm in Shiheng world. In the future, who can restrain him? Damn it! He actually escaped from the Tao discussion lantern meeting this time, so we missed the best opportunity to kill him. No matter what sort of discussion it was, everyone was clearly aware that from today onward, anyone who wanted to kill demonic god Lin had to consider if their ability was sufficient. It was just a Tao discussion lantern meeting, yet countless geniuses had died at his hands. Sha Luchan, Zhongli Wuji, Yu Lingkong, Qing Lian, every single one of them had an enormous power standing behind them, yet demonic god Lin still killed them without hesitation, and he ran amok without the slightest fear or retreat. Up until now, even a few dozen half-step king realm existences had been annihilated in one go. In the future, unless there was enmity between them, who would dare offend him in Shiheng world? Our next journey should be slightly more peaceful. On the layer of clouds, within the vast universe arc, Lin Sun was finally able to relax. Peaceful. Bai Lingshi couldn't help but remind him. You've killed so many inheritors of ancient orthodoxies. So long as you stay in Shiheng world, then unexpected enemies will come looking for you. Don't underestimate those ancient orthodoxies. They've been in the world for countless years, yet they still stand towering and look down upon the world. Their resources are so deep and their forces are so enormous that it's sufficient to make even king realm existences fear them. Lin Sun nodded. He understood all this. The biggest reason why ancient orthodoxies were so terrifying was that there were king realm experts in their sects, and there were more than one of them. And in some top ancient orthodoxies there were even real sages in them. For example, there was a living sage in Xianwen Sword House, the first orthodoxy in Shiheng world. This was their resources, and it was also one of the biggest differences between ancient orthodoxies and other forces. So I'll leave Shiheng world immediately after I settle the matter at hand. I can't afford to offend them now, but can't I hide? Lin Sun said with a smile. Immediately? Where do you plan to go? Bai Lingshi was curious. Dongxing world. Lin Sun didn't hide it. He was going to prepare for revenge. He was going to find out the details of Heavenly Sword Sect, especially to further understand what kind of person Yun Qinbai was. That's the most glorious and prosperous world in the ancient Desolation realm. It's not an exaggeration to say that there are many orthodoxies and tens of thousands of schools contending for supremacy there. Bai Lingshi obviously knew something about Dongxing world. She said, in this Shiheng world, only a few top orthodoxies, such as Xianwen Sword House, have real sages. But in Dongxing world, there are at least dozens of ancient orthodoxies like Xianwen Sword House. Lin Sun was shocked. He didn't expect that there would be such a big difference between Shiheng world and Dongxing world. Bai Lingshi continued, moreover, Dongxing world is regarded as the origin of the ancient Desolation realm. Since ancient times, it has been known as home of sages, eternal land of sages, and so on. Its long and ancient resources far exceed those of the other three realms. I once heard Yu Lingkong say that 70% of the top peerless geniuses in the world are from the East Victory world, and the remaining 30% are occupied by the Western Horizontal world, Southern Profound world, and Northern Dipper world. It's obvious from this how prosperous and brilliant the East Victory world is. Speaking of this, a trace of longing and yearning couldn't help but appear in her voice. Lin Sun couldn't help being moved. Home of sages. Eternal land of sages. Just by hearing these praises, one could know how extraordinary Dongxing world was. When I came to the Western Heng world, Yu Lingkong once said that I would immediately head to the East Victory world when I return this time. Because if the genius gold rankings that has shocked the world since the ancient times were to appear, it would definitely appear in the East Victory world. Moreover, you ought to be clearly aware that since the ancient times until now, it's publicly acknowledged that only those who are able to ascend onto this ranking can be considered as true geniuses, and only those who possess the qualifications to compete for the ultimate king realm in this world. Hearing this, Lin Sun said thoughtfully, if it's true, won't all the peerless figures of the younger generation in the four realms rush to Dongxing world before the great world battle? Exactly. Bai Lingshi nodded. Speaking of this, she suddenly thought of something, and a trace of solemnity appeared between her eyebrows. I have one thing to remind you. What? Yu Lingkong is not dead. Lin Sun's pupils constricted abruptly, and he felt disbelief. Yu Lingkong was personally annihilated by him, so how could he possibly still be alive? Bai Lingshi said seriously, because a strand of his soul has been nurtured in the Hall of Immortality since a long time ago. Unless this strand of his soul is eliminated, otherwise, no one in this world is capable of killing him. Only now did Lin Sun come to an understanding, and he was slightly unable to calm down in his heart. He couldn't help but frown as he said, so in this way, if I want to kill this strand of his soul, then I must possess the strength to completely suppress the Hall of Immortality? Exactly. Bai Lingshi sighed lightly. No matter if it's the Pure Land of Immortality or the Yu clan, both of them won't allow Yu Lingkong to be killed. Because Yu Lingkong is looked upon favorably by all of them, and they feel that he has the highest chance to step foot into the peak of the King Realm in the Great World Battle. Chapter 942. Bai Lingshi couldn't help but raise her head and look over. She saw Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and his brows were full of arrogance and calmness. If it wasn't for the Immortal Palace, Yu Lingkong was bound to be no match for Lin Sun, so there was nothing to worry about. After that, Bai Lingshi suddenly realized that she always thought Lin Sun was still the same Lin Sun, but she had overlooked one thing. Lin Sun had already forged his own invincible reputation through numerous battles among the younger generation of the West Hing world, and there were almost no one who could compete with him. A few hours later, Bai Lingshi left when she arrived at a city in the Great Qin province. She was going to the Profound Inquiry Sword House, and a big shot of the Immortal Palace was already waiting there. Whether it was Bai Lingshi or the other successors of the Immortal Palace who participated in the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, all of them had to gather there and then set off for their sections. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to cross a world and return to the southern profound world by relying on their own strength. This made Lin Sun suddenly realize that if he wanted to leave the West Hing world and go to the Dongxing world, he had to solve a problem as well. How should he cross a world? Lin Sun had hoped that the Green Hill Fox clan could help him solve this problem, but he gave up this thought because of a conflict. Lin Sun thought for a long time before he decided to immediately solve this problem after he sent Yu Jianming's corpse back to his homeland. 7 days later. Fire Spirit Province, Yen capital. Lin Sun walked into this bustling city once again. Half a year ago, when he arrived at the ancient Desolation Realm for the first time, this was the first city he entered. When he revisited his homeland, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of Xia Xiaochong, the innocent and confused girl, and he also thought of Xiaohao, a mysterious figure who was dormant in Starfall Peak of Purple Bull Mountain. Xiaohao was from the Nether Star Imperial clan, and he was the young master of this clan. The place where he was dormant was extremely mysterious, and it was protected by the Star Sacred Formation and the Star Egg for him to reside in. At that time, Lin Sun had a strong premonition that when Xiaohao came out from his dormant state, he was bound to cause a storm in the world and shine brilliantly. It was because he was too extraordinary, possessing great boldness, great ambition, and great ambitions. His origins were mysterious, and he had long remained silent for who knew how many years, just waiting for the great era to arrive before making an appearance. At that time, Xiaohao also took the initiative to give Lin a secluded star bug raining method, which was a secret method for raising spirit-eating bugs, which solved Lin's urgent need. Xiaohao and the mysterious young master, who is being protected by an azure-robed old ape in the Sinkhole's 5 Elements Sacred Island, should be the same kind of people. When the great era arrives, they will definitely appear out of nowhere. While Lin was thinking, he unconsciously came to the message tree in the center of the city. This place was still as lively and noisy as before, with many practitioners surrounding it. Speaking of which, this demon god Lin only rose to prominence in our Yendu city. At that time, he had just begun to reveal his extraordinary talent. Who could have imagined that his name would spread throughout the entire Western Hing domain? He's like a king among the younger generation, an unparalleled existence? As the saying goes, people don't recognize the cloud-soaring tree, and only when the cloud-soaring tree is high will the Tao begin. Unfortunately, the path of demon god Lin's rise was too bloody, and he's offended countless ancient orthodoxies. His future will surely be accompanied by numerous dangers and killing tribulations. Humph. That's absurd. Isn't it just because demon god Lin came from the mortal world and has no one to rely on? Only those ancient orthodoxies are allowed to bully others, but demon god Lin isn't allowed to fight back? That's too unfair. There was a lot of news on the message tree, and most of them were related to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. Moreover, news related to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival was bound to be related to Lin Sun. It could even be said that along with the end of the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, the most sensational news in the Western Hing domain recently was related to Lin Sun. As a result, discussions about him naturally became the hottest topic of discussion. Lin Sun had already used the grand formless art to change his appearance and temperament, otherwise, he would definitely be recognized at the first possible moment. Lin Sun's gaze lingered on the message tree for a long time before he turned around and left. He was very clearly aware that the greater his reputation was, the more danger he was bound to face, and those ancient orthodoxies were bound to not let the matter go. In his opinion, the Western Hing domain had already become a treacherous and dangerous vortex, and it wasn't advisable to stay for long. Moreover, the matter of leaving had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Help me contact Bai Fenglu. Tell him that I want to obtain fortune, and I'll meet him in Flame Capital 3 days from now. It wasn't long before Lin Sun found an expert from the Wind Speaker clan, and after he expressed his intentions, Lin Sun gave the expert 100 mid-grade spiritual essence before leaving swiftly. Fire Spirit Province, Thousand Lake City. This was an extremely remote small city that wasn't large in scale, and it was like a remote village when compared to Flame Capital. The Zheng clan was the most powerful clan in Qianhu City, but the most powerful elder in the clan was only at the reincarnation development realm. One day later, Lin Sun's figure appeared in Thousand Lake City. Yu Jianming? Of course, I know him. He is the pride of Thousand Lake City. Among the younger generation, he is the most dazzling one. I heard that his reputation has already spread throughout the Fire Spirit Province. On the way, Lin Sun found a practitioner to inquire about Yu Jianming. The latter looked proud, and his tone was full of admiration for Yu Jianming. This made Lin Sun a little sad. What would he think if he knew that Yu Jianming had passed away? Immediately, Lin Sun suddenly realized that the news of Yu Jianming's death seemed to have not spread to this remote town yet. Do you know where the Yu family is? Green Willow Lake. You'll know when you get there. Thanks a lot. After saying goodbye to the practitioner, Lin Sun soon found his destination. It was a quiet and beautiful lake. The water of the lake was clear and jade green, and there were numerous vigorous and emerald green willow trees by the lake. A myriad of willow branches danced in the wind, and they were lush and graceful. The Yu family was located at the lakeside. It was a simple and magnificent mansion. On the way here, Lin Sun had inquired about Yu Jianming. When Yu Jianming was 7 years old, his biological mother died of a stubborn disease. His father was so sad that his hair turned white overnight. Only half a year later, he also passed away. Today, there were only Yu Jianming and his twin brother Yu Jianfei left in the Yu family. Sword Cry was amazing when it didn't cry. Sword Fei soared into the sky when it didn't cry. Just from their names, it could be seen that the two brothers were entrusted with the high hopes of their parents. But to Lin Sun's surprise, Yu Jianming's talent was extraordinary and extremely suitable for cultivation. When he was 13 years old, he was chosen by a master of Thousand Illusion Taoism sect and was accepted as a disciple. On the contrary, Yu Jianfei was weak and sickly since he was a child, and his mind seemed to be defective. Until now, he had not returned to normal. This matter also became a strange story in Qianhu City. His elder brother was famous in the fire spirit realm, but his younger brother was born with a defect. It was difficult not to pay attention to him. However, since Yu Jianming joined Thousand Illusion Taoism sect, no one in Qianhu City dared to laugh at his younger brother Yu Jianfei. Squeak after Lin Sun knocked on the door, the closed door of Yu family was opened. An old servant in plain clothes came out with a puzzled look. Child, who are you looking for? Yu Jianfei. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said. He was surprised to find that the old servant in front of him seemed to have been beaten violently. His face was swollen and there were many footprints on his clothes. The old servant's face suddenly changed and he said angrily, "You are sent by Jing family. My second son was taken away by you this morning. What else do you want?" Jing family? Lin Sun was stunned and frowned. Old man, you misunderstood me. I'm Yu Jianming's friend. I come here for something. The old servant was stunned and immediately said in surprise, Child, you are really a friend of Jianming? So, you are also a disciple from Thousand Illusion Taoism sect? That's great. Now the second young master can be saved. If you didn't come, I was going to ask for help from Thousand Illusion Taoism sect myself. As he spoke, he actually had tears in his old eyes, looking as if he was crying tears of joy. Yu Jianfei was taken away? Lin soon narrowed his black eyes and had a bad feeling in his heart. He asked directly, "What on earth is going on? Old man, please tell me in detail." Okay. The old servant wiped away the tears in his eyes and nodded repeatedly. After 10 minutes, Lin Sun finally understood what was going on. It turned out that in the year when Yu Jianming joined Thousand Illusion Taoism sect, Zheng family, the largest clan in Qianhu City, came to Yu Jianfei and wanted to marry Zheng Yunxiao, the youngest daughter of the patriarch of Zheng family. They also signed a marriage contract and promised that when Zheng Yunxiao was 18 years old, she would officially marry Yu Jianfei. This matter caused a great sensation at that time because everyone knew that Yu Jianfei was a fool. Zheng family obviously wanted to get closer to Yu Jianming by means of marriage. After all, Yu Jianming had joined Thousand Illusion Taoism sect at that time and his future was limitless. If they could become relatives with Yu Jianming, Zheng family's position in Qianhu City would undoubtedly be more stable. Yu Jianming naturally knew this, but he finally agreed to this matter because he went to Thousand Illusion Taoism sect to cultivate and was doomed to be unable to take care of his younger brother. In order to prevent his mentally defective younger brother from being bullied, Yu Jianming made such a decision so that his younger brother could live a carefree life under the protection of Zheng family. This kind of marriage continued until this year. According to the age, Zheng Yunxiao, the youngest daughter of the patriarch of Zheng family, was 18 years old and it was time for her to get married. But in recent days, Zheng family suddenly reneged and refused to admit that there had been such a thing. They even threatened that it was impossible for their daughter to marry a fool. Now there was only one old servant left in Yu family who took care of Yu Jianfei's daily life. In the face of such a change, he immediately panicked and didn't know what to do. And Yu Jianfei was a mentally defective person, so he couldn't help at all. Originally, the old servant hoped that Yu Jianming, who was cultivating in Thousand Illusion Taoism sect, could come back to uphold justice. Who would have thought that just this morning, Zheng family suddenly sent a group of people to break into Yu family and take away Yu Jianfei, who was eating. When Lin soon arrived, the old servant was writing a letter to Yu Jianming of Thousand Illusion Taoism sect for help. Of course, Lin soon knew that since this letter could be delivered to Thousand Illusion Taoism sect, Yu Jianming was doomed to never come back. Knowing all this, Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly flashed a touch of coldness, and a touch of anger surged uncontrollably in his heart. Chapter 943. Plop. After saying the reason, the old servant knelt on the ground and burst into tears. "Child, please save my second young master." Lin Sun quickly helped him up and said, "Don't worry, old man. Jianming is my friend. His younger brother is my younger brother." As he spoke, his black eyes flashed with a touch of coldness. On the way to Qianhu City, Lin Sun had learned that the Zheng clan was the largest clan in Qianhu City. It was like a mountain, oppressing Qianhu City, and no one could shake it. But in Lin Sun's view, the Zheng clan was not a threat at all. The strongest person in the Zheng clan was only at the reincarnation developing realm. For the residents of the city, he might be a great figure. Unfortunately, in Lin Sun's eyes, he was no different from a chicken or a dog. This was not arrogance, but a kind of disdainful demeanor cultivated by years of battle. Since Lin Sun entered the ancient desolation realm, countless strong practitioners at the reincarnation developing realm had died in his hands, and most of them were peerless talents in the Westing realm. The so-called great practitioners at the reincarnation developing realm of the Zheng clan were not qualified to carry the shoes of these peerless talents. Not to mention, there were also many half-step king realm experts who died in Lin Sun's hands. Under such circumstances, it would be a joke if Lin Sun still had any concerns. "Old man, please lead the way for me." "Child, you are so righteous." Although I am a useless old man, I am willing to serve you without any hesitation. The Zheng clan. The atmosphere in the magnificent hall was very subtle. The patriarch of the Zheng clan, Zheng Qianlong, sat upright on the main seat with an indifferent expression. His drooping eyes carried a trace of arrogance as he looked at a young man at the center of the hall, and his gaze didn't contain a trace of emotion. The young man's clothes were neat and tidy, and his face was like jade. He was quite handsome, but at this moment, he sat on the ground aggrievedly and repeated the words, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. This was Yu Jianfei. On both sides of the hall, there were many senior figures of the Zheng clan, men and women, old and young. At this moment, they did not hide their contempt, disgust, disdain, and mockery. That was because they knew that this well-dressed and talented fellow in front of them was, in fact, a natural-born fool. He was just a fool. How could he tell good from bad? Just like how he was sitting on the ground in the middle of the hall, being looked down upon by everyone, yet he didn't feel the slightest bit of humiliation. He only knew how to complain about being hungry. He was simply too stupid. Nephew, it's fine if you want to eat your fill. Take out your marriage contract and accept the annulment unconditionally. Then, I'll reward you with a bowl of rice. Zheng Qianlong spoke, his expression indifferent. There was no mockery. For someone like him to bicker with a fool, that would be the true shame. Uncle Zheng, what's an engagement annulment? Is it edible? Yu Jianfei had a perplexed look on his face. Zheng Qianlong's face darkened. He felt a little impatient and said, How about this? Just hand over the marriage contract. What's a marriage contract? This should be edible, right? Yu Jianfei continued asking. He did not hear the impatience in Zheng Qianlong's voice at all. He seemed very serious and curious. Everyone was speechless. He really is a big fool. Big brother, why waste your breath on an idiot? Can't you just kill him? A higher-up of the Zheng clan was extremely impatient. Killing an idiot isn't a big deal. But this idiot is Yu Jiaming's younger brother in the end, so it's better to pay attention to the consequences. Zheng Qianlong spoke with an expressionless face. Yu Jiaming? A middle-aged woman laughed with ridicule, and she spoke with a sharp and unkind tone. This genius that's renowned throughout the Firesoul Prefecture was a proud and unyielding genius. For the sake of the infamous devil god Lin who slaughtered madly, he even gave up his life, and he truly died a heroic death. This Yu Jiaming died at the right time. If he was still alive and others found out about his relationship with our Zheng clan, then wouldn't that be terrible? A white-haired old man stroked his beard and said, He's a friend of Devil God Lin, and Devil God Lin has been targeted by the numerous ancient sects of the West Ocean world since a long time ago. Everyone has the right to kill Devil God Lin, and he's simply a great calamity. Anyone who comes into contact with him will suffer misfortune. If Yu Jiaming didn't die, then our Zheng clan would probably be implicated in the future. The middle-aged woman chuckled. Exactly. I heard that the Thousand Illusion Dao sect is already in a panic, and they don't even dare take revenge for Yu Jiaming. Instead, they're drawing a line with Yu Jiaming and announcing to the world that Yu Jiaming brought it upon himself and deserved it, and it isn't related to their Thousand Illusion Dao sect. Even the Thousand Illusion Dao sect abandoned Yu Jiaming. Our Zheng clan absolutely can't be implicated by this fellow. So, we must deal with this idiot today. In the hall, everyone spoke one after another as they laughed and chatted freely without the slightest fear of being heard by Yu Jianfei. I'm hungry. I'm really so hungry. I want to go home. Yu Jiaming had been talking to himself since the beginning, and his face was covered in grievance. Come, Jianfei, eat first. A beautiful young woman with a graceful figure walked into the hall while carrying steaming hot dishes. Yun Xiao, what are you doing? Zheng Qianlong frowned. Father, let me do it. Zheng Yunxiao spoke with a warm voice, and she'd already squatted down to pass the dishes to Yu Jianfei. Yu Jianfei held up the bowl of rice and started wolfing it down, and he still spoke vaguely. Xiao Xiao is still the best to me. Once my brother returns, I must ask him to personally arrange the marriage for us. A wave of ridicule resounded out in the hall. This idiot is still thinking about getting married at a time like this. He's truly stupid to the extreme. Jing Yunxiao said gently, Jianfei, since you feel that I'm good to you, then can you tell me where exactly is our marriage agreement? Yu Jianfei said with a dazed expression, Qiao Qiao, what exactly is a marriage agreement? Why do all of you want it? Zheng Yunxiao was just about to explain when she saw Yu Jianfei had already buried his head in eating. Qiao Qiao, can we speak after I'm full? The gentle expression on Zheng Yunxiao's face instantly vanished and transformed into a livid expression of detest. The resentment that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time couldn't be controlled any longer, and she slapped away the bowl and chopsticks in Yu Jianfei's hand. Kacha! The bowl of rice shattered, and the splashing fragments were like sharp blades, brushing past Yu Jianfei's cheek, leaving a bloodstain. All of a sudden, Yu Jianfei was dumbfounded. His eyes widened and his mouth was still stuffed with food. He had a silly and stupefied look. Qiao Qiao, did I do something wrong again? Seeing him like this, Zheng Yunxiao was so angry that her whole body trembled. She shouted in a sharp voice, Eat, eat, eat. All you know is to eat. I've long had enough of you, idiot. All these years, if it wasn't because of your brother, do you think I would pay attention to a fool like you? Yu Jianfei said in a daze, Qiao Qiao, don't you like fools the most? So you've been lying to me all along. Zheng Yunxiao was so angry that her cheeks flushed red. Shut up. Only an idiot likes a fool. Let me tell you, your brother is already dead. Your Yu clan only has you left as a fool. Do you think that trash like you wants to marry me? Wishful thinking. Yu Jianfei stiffened there. Although his mind was flawed, he was also a person of flesh and blood. He also had feelings. Suffering such a blow, he would similarly be sad and upset. You're lying. My brother can't possibly die. Yu Jianfei shouted. He was so agitated that his body trembled, and his eyes were red. Qiao Qiao, you're lying to me, right? Is there a need for me to lie to a fool like you? Zheng Yunxiao sneered. This is impossible. My brother said that he would help me cure my illness in the future, so that I can also cultivate like him. How could he lie? Yu Jiaming's eyes were brimming with tears as he squatted on the ground. The wound on his cheek was dripping blood. The food and soup on the ground were scattered, making him look abnormally helpless and embarrassed. However, the crowd of Jing clan members in the hall were indifferent. A fool was simply not worthy of their understanding and sympathy. Where is the marriage contract? Are you going to tell me or not? Zheng Yunxiao was completely impatient. The moment she learned of Yu Jiaming's death, the resentment and anger that she had suppressed in her heart for many years could no longer be controlled. The heavens have eyes. She's finally freed herself from the shackles of fate, and she doesn't have to marry a fool any longer. Yu Jianfei was completely unaware as he sat on the ground and muttered in a daze. My brother won't die. He'd never lie to me. He'll surely come back to look for me. Instantly, Zheng Yunxiao's rage couldn't be restrained from rushing into her mind, and she raised her right hand to slap Yu Jiaming's face. This fool! If it wasn't for that marriage contract, she would have wished for nothing more than to kill him 1,000 times since long ago. When they saw Zheng Yunxiao's actions, all the great figures of the Zheng clan present understood, and no one stopped her. All of them had the same thought. He's only an idiot, so what if I kill him? If you dare make a move, then I'll make you wish you were dead yet unable to. In the blink of an eye, right at the same time that Zheng Yunxiao raised her palm, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded in the hall. It was like a bone-piercingly cold blizzard had swept over, causing the temperature of the air to drop and the sky to wail, and the entire hall was filled with a suffocating pressure. Zheng Yunxiao's entire body stiffened. She felt it even more intensely, as if a sharp awl was fiercely pressed against her heart. If she dared to move even a little bit, she would suffer unimaginable consequences. At this moment, she felt as if she'd been stared at by the god of death. At the same time, the pupils of the Jing clan's higher-ups constricted, and their hearts trembled for a moment. Their expressions changed abruptly as they looked towards the outside of the hall. They saw that a youth dressed in moon-white clothes was already standing there at an unknown time. His long hair draped over his shoulders, revealing a handsome yet ice-cold face. Especially his eyes, which were as deep as an abyss, surged with a cold light that caused one's soul to tremble. Besides this youth, there was also an old servant standing beside him. The higher-ups of the Jing clan recognized him with a single glance. He was the only old servant of the Yu clan, and he was just like a slave, not worth mentioning. However, they couldn't see through that youth, and this caused them to be bewildered. However, what they felt first wasn't fear, but anger. An old servant of the Yu clan, bringing along a youth, dared to barge into their Jing clan. Wasn't this too presumptuous? As the number one power in Qianhu, the higher-ups of the Jing clan were already used to acting tyrannically. Moreover, for many years, no one had dared to provoke them, causing them to develop an overbearing and despotic aura. Just like the saying that had been passed down in Qianhu, it was better to offend a ghost of the King of Hell than to offend a dog of the Jing clan. Chapter 944 Could be seen how domineering Jing family was in Qianhu City. Therefore, even though they noticed that the boy's breath was extraordinary, the first reaction of the senior members of Jing family in the hall was not fear, but anger. Second young master. The old servant let out a cry of grief and rushed over. He didn't expect that Yu Jianfei would squat on the ground with bloodstains on his face and scattered food in front of him. Obviously, he had suffered a lot of humiliation. How cruel you are! The old servant was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. Uncle Wen, they said that my brother will never come back. They are lying, aren't they? Yu Jianfei grasped the old servant's arm tightly, as if he had grasped a life-saving straw. What? Young master can't come back? The old servant was like being struck by lightning. He was stiff all over and lost his voice. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Young master is the successor of Thousand Illusion sect. How can he not come back? Hey, old man, I'm not afraid to tell you that Yu Jianming is dead. Don't expect him to come back for you again. The middle-aged woman sneered. Also, the Thousand Illusions Dao sect has also issued a statement. Yu Jianming's death is his own fault, and has nothing to do with the Thousand Illusions Dao sect anymore. This also means that the Thousand Illusions Dao sect will no longer care about your Yu clan's idiot second young master. She was very proud, ignoring Lin Sun outside the hall, and took this opportunity to attack the old servant with vicious words. The old servant's vision darkened. He felt as if the sky was about to collapse. How could young master die? Like Yu Jianfei, he couldn't accept this bad news. Outside the hall, Lin Sun sighed in his heart and looked at Yu Jianfei with a complicated expression. The latter and Yu Jianming were twins and looked exactly the same. Seeing him, Lin Sun couldn't help thinking of Yu Jianming and the words he said before he died. You regard me as a friend, so I won't let you be threatened. At that moment, Yu Jianming was resolute and calm, with an apologetic expression on his face. At the thought of this, Lin Sun felt suffocated as if his chest was filled with stones. He murmured in his heart, You regard me as your friend. How can I let your younger brother be humiliated? Old thing, you've come at the right time. If you know what's good for you, then tell us where the marriage contract is. We've sent people to search the Yu clan, but we couldn't find the marriage contract no matter how hard we searched. Moreover, this fool doesn't know anything. Tell us, did you hide the marriage contract? The middle-aged woman stood up, her eyes cold. She scolded the old servant. Let me tell you, even if you brought help, it's useless. This is the Jing family. In Qianhu City, no one dares to cause trouble in my Jing family. So, You know that the eldest young master is dead. That's why you dare to humiliate our Yu clan. I finally understand that you are a bunch of ungrateful ingrates. The veins on the old servant's forehead bulged as he roared, even if I die today, I will not hand over the marriage contract. I will make your Jing family bear the infamy of being ungrateful for the rest of your life. You're courting death. The middle-aged woman was obviously used to running amok. She immediately stepped forward and slapped the old servant with her palm, intending to teach the old servant a lesson. Almost at the same time, Lin soon awoke from his guilty thoughts. When he saw this scene, a frightening cold light burst out of his eyes. He had already revealed his pressure, but the other party did not restrain herself. Instead, she was still so domineering and arrogant. It could be seen how overbearing the Jing family was in Qianhu City in the past. Swish! His figure flashed and appeared in front of the old servant. He stretched out his hand, grabbed the middle-aged woman's arm, and threw her out. With a bang, the middle-aged woman fell to the ground. She saw stars and screamed angrily, "You little brat, how dare you hit me in my Jing family? Kneel." Lin Sun's voice was low and cold. "You want me to kneel? How dare you?" The middle-aged woman became even more furious. In the past, she was used to acting like a tyrant in Qianhu City, and she had never suffered such a scolding. Her anger immediately rushed to her head, and she lost her mind. But before she could finish speaking, she felt as if a divine mountain was pressing down on her, and she knelt on the ground with a thump. The bones and tendons in her body cracked, and blood flowed from her 7 apertures. She almost fainted. She was shocked and opened her mouth to ask for help, but she could not make a sound. At the same time, the other great figures of the Jing family were horrified, and their expressions changed abruptly. From the moment Lin Sun entered the hall to the moment the middle-aged woman knelt down, only a blink of an eye had passed. But the means Lin Sun revealed had already caused them to feel terrified. Originally, they thought that no matter how strong a young man was, he would not dare to rashly start a war with their Jing family. At most, he would come to plead for the Yu family. So even though they were surprised and bewildered, they were not afraid. But now they could not sit still. "Little friend, no matter who you are, this is the territory of my Jing family. Don't you think you've gone too far by rushing in like this?" The old man with white hair and beard spoke. "Taking advantage of your seniority, kneel down too." At this time, Lin Sun's eyebrows were like knives, his black eyes were cold like lightning, and his whole body was emitting a terrifying and frightening aura. He did not seem like an outsider, but more like the master of life and death here. Thump! As Lin Sun's voice fell, he did not seem to move, but the white-haired old man suddenly let out a scream. His body collapsed, and he knelt down on both knees. His old face was suffocated to the point that it turned purple. All of a sudden, the whole audience was silent. The Jing family's higher-ups were not stupid. The reason why they were so fearless before was because they relied on their huge power in Qianhu City, which gave them great confidence. Moreover, Lin Sun was only one person, and a young man at that. They did not expect the other party's power to be so terrifying. Without making a move, with just a few words, he used his own power to force 2 of the Jing family's higher-ups to kneel. This was too frightening. Where did the old servant of the Yu family find such a tyrannical person? "Young master, ignorance is not wrong. If I have offended you in any way before, please forgive me." A middle-aged man in embroidered robes took a deep breath, and a humble smile hung on his face. "Humility and hypocrisy, kneel down." Lin Sun did not even look at him. With one sentence, the middle-aged man in embroidered robes also knelt down with a thud. His knees were cracked, and he let out a scream, and his cheeks were distorted. The hall became more and more silent. Everyone could not help but feel a touch of panic in their hearts. Who was this young man? How could he have such terrible power? Big trouble. Jing Qianlong's heart fell to the bottom, and he felt cold all over. He realized that he had hit an iron plate this time. It was false that a strong dragon could not suppress a local snake. In the face of absolute strength, everything was no different from paper paste. Uncle One, why did they all suddenly kneel down? Is it a magic trick? Yu Jianfei opened his mouth in confusion, which was unusually loud in this deathly silent atmosphere. This was obviously absurd and ridiculous. If it was any other time, the big shots of the Jing family present would definitely burst into laughter and humiliate him without hesitation. But now they could not laugh. Their faces were extremely stiff, as if they were grieving the death of their parents. The old servant had long been shocked by Lin Sun's overbearing and neat means. Moreover, his cultivation was shallow, so he could not see the mystery, so he naturally could not answer this question. It's not a magic trick. They are atoning for their sins, Lin Sun said softly. Atonement. Yu Jianfei was confused. Yes, they must pay for what they have done today. Lin Sun's words were like a heavy hammer, which made all the senior officials of the Jing family a little confused and frightened. Was he not going to let it go? Child, I can see that you are here for Yu Jianfei. In this case, why not discuss it? Why do you have to fight and kill? Jing Qianlong finally couldn't sit still. He stood up and said in a deep voice, Our Jing family has not treated Yu Jianfei unfairly these years. The reason why today's incident happened is also a misunderstanding. If there is any mistake, our Jing family is willing to give adequate compensation. What do you think, child? Misunderstanding? A touch of coldness flashed through Lin Sun's black eyes. Before, he had already arrived at Jing family. Covering this area with his spiritual awareness, he clearly heard the dialogue between Jing Qianlong and the others. Naturally, he knew that this guy seemed to be sincere, but in fact, he was still lying. Kneel down and talk. Lin Sun looked at him with his black eyes. As if his words were the law, a majesty spread out. You. Jing Qianlong was furious. Caught unprepared, he was almost suppressed to kneel down. He struggled with all his strength. He was really shocked and angry. As the patriarch of Jing family, he was absolutely a dominating existence in Qianhu City. If he knelt down, how could he gain a foothold in Qianhu City in the future? But to Jing Qianlong's horror, no matter how he struggled, his body was forcibly pressed to the ground by a terrible and irresistible force in the blink of an eye. In this process, he was furious, roaring and struggling with all his might. But in the end, he still knelt down. No one knew how many bones in his body were broken. It was extremely tragic. You are just a practitioner at the fulfillment of Sea Spirit Realm. Do you really think you can dominate this remote town? Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. This was really like the saying, when there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey becomes the king. Just like in Feiyun village of Xiao Empire, Lian Rufeng, a practitioner at the martial realm, dared to oppress all the villagers in the village and make them angry, but no one dared to resist. Why? Because there was no strong practitioner in Feiyun village. Obviously, Jing family was in a similar situation. They thought they could be domineering in an inconspicuous town like Qianhu City. Why? Because there was no strong practitioner here who could threaten them. Unfortunately, they met Lin Sun today. Jing Qianlong's kneeling made other senior members of Jing family in the hall completely dumbfounded. They were scared out of their wits and trembled in fear. Before, they were still very conceited and full of confidence, never really afraid of Lin Sun. But now they were like frosted eggplant. The contrast was so great that even the old servant of Yu family was stunned. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning as he glanced around. Why don't you speak? Then all of you kneel down and be obedient. As soon as his voice fell, there was a sound of people kneeling on the ground in the hall. For a moment, except for Lin Sun, the old servant of Yu family and Yu Jianfei who was helped up, everyone else in the hall knelt down. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't move a finger at all. Such terrible power directly made those senior members of Jing family feel desperate and realize that they had kicked a big iron plate this time. If you want to kill us, just kill us. Why do you humiliate us like this? In the final analysis, aren't you relying on your own strength? In this case, what's wrong with us targeting you Jianfei like this? But at this time, Zheng Yunqiao, who was also kneeling on the ground, seemed to be extremely indignant and screamed out, "Not good!" Zheng Qianlong and others were all shocked. The provocation in these words was too strong. If they angered this young man, there would be a big disaster. Chapter 945. Zheng Yunqiao's angry question reverberated in the hall, making the atmosphere even more depressing. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun didn't attack her in anger. Instead, he nodded and said, "You're right. In this world, strength is everything and the strong are above the weak." But Lin Sun changed the topic. His black eyes swept over all the senior members of the Zheng family coldly, and finally fell on Zheng Yunqiao. "Zheng family is wrong. Why do you say that?" Zheng Yunqiao was not convinced. "Because I'm stronger than you and my fist is bigger than yours. You humiliated my friend's brother, which is the same as humiliating my brother. What's wrong with asking you to kneel down and atone for your sins?" Lin Sun looked serious and calm, and every word he said was like thunder. His words seemed reasonable, but they were unreasonable and overbearing, which made Zheng Yunqiao speechless. "In the end, you're just taking advantage of your power to bully others," Zheng Yunqiao said fiercely after a while, her eyes full of resentment. "I'm bullying your Zheng family, so what?" Lin Sun said disdainfully. "You're in the right just because you're weak? If you really understand what strength is, you won't ask such an idiotic question." Zheng Yunqiao's expression was uncertain, but in the end she was disappointed. She knew that it was useless to say anything at this time. The hall was silent. All the senior members of the Zheng family, including Zheng Qianlong, knelt on the ground, terrified as if their parents had died. Seeing this scene, the old servant of the Yu family felt inexplicably happy. But when he thought that the young master might never come back, he couldn't help but feel sad. "Sir, you've gone too far by making trouble in our Zheng family." Just then, an old voice sounded. "The first elder." In an instant, Zheng Qianlong and the others' eyes lit up, and a glimmer of hope appeared in their originally terrified and helpless hearts. The first elder was a great practitioner of the reincarnation developing realm. He had been an adult for many years and was a great practitioner of the reincarnation developing realm. He was a well-known big shot not only in Qianhu City, but also in other nearby cities. In everyone's opinion, if the first elder came forward this time, perhaps there would be a turning point. Along with the voice, a graceful and dignified old man in a dark green robe walked in with large strides. His entire person had a kind of firm and unyielding aura, like a mountain. When he saw the people of the Zheng family kneeling on the ground, the practitioner narrowed his eyes imperceptibly, and a haze appeared between his eyebrows. Then he looked at Lin Sun and said, "It turns out that you are a young talent who has stepped into the middle level of reincarnation developing realm. No wonder you are so fearless." His voice was indifferent and carried a hint of anger as he said to the people on the ground, "I'm already here, so why are you still kneeling? Aren't you ashamed?" Even though it was a reprimand, Zheng Qianlong and the others felt much calmer in their hearts instead. They felt that this was a sign that the Grand Elder was confident in his ability to capture that youth. But when they were just about to stand up, they felt the pressure in their surroundings rise abruptly, and it pressed down on them to the point they were almost unable to raise their heads while their bones and tendons almost broke. At the same time, Lin Sun said in a voice even calmer than that of a spiritual practitioner, "Old guy, it's not good to be arrogant. Kneel down and talk to me." "What an arrogant young man! Didn't your elders teach you manners?" The face of the spiritual practitioner darkened. He thought that he had spoken politely enough and did not immediately make things difficult for Lin Sun. He did not expect that Lin Sun did not know how to appreciate his kindness and provoked him. "You want me to talk about manners? You old guy, do you deserve it?" As Lin Sun spoke, he struck out with his palm. It was simple and direct, and it looked very sloppy and ordinary. You really want to die? The spiritual practitioner was completely enraged. With a rumble, a terrible power suddenly burst out of his body, and the divine light filled the air, like an old dragon that had awakened from silence. He also struck out with his palm, and the momentum of his palm was fierce and bright. He was just a young man in the middle level of reincarnation developing realm, but he dared to be so arrogant. He must be an arrogant young man who had never experienced any twists and turns. He decided to teach Kwang Sheng an unforgettable lesson. Bang! However, the moment the palm energy collided, the spiritual practitioner was stunned. He found that his palm seemed to have hit a ball of cotton. There was a feeling of emptiness, and all the palm energy was swallowed up in an instant. The spiritual practitioner suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, when he was just about to change his move, he felt that the palm energy, which was originally like a ball of cotton, suddenly changed. It became as deep as an abyss, and it was boundlessly terrifying. With a crack, the spiritual practitioner's palm, fingers, and arm were instantly broken by a landslide and tsunami-like force, and blood burst out. Ah! The spiritual practitioner screamed. He was so shocked that his soul almost came out of his body, and he could not believe his eyes. Was this the power that a young man in the middle level of reincarnation developing realm should have? Boom! Before he could react, the terrible palm energy had shrouded his whole body. It was like a mountain pressing down on him, with an unshakable majestic momentum. Instantly, under the astonished and terrified gazes of everyone present, the Grand Elder, who was like a stabilizing force in their hearts, actually knelt down with a thump, and his knees smashed onto the ground, causing a large hole to be smashed open on the ground while crushed rocks flew in all directions. The audience was silent. Everyone looked at Lin Sun as if they were looking at a demon, full of disbelief and fear. What kind of young man was he? The first elder, who was at the complete reincarnation developing realm, could not resist one blow from him and was forced to kneel down. It was too terrifying. Old man, do you think you are qualified to talk to me about etiquette now? Lin Sun's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. The old servant of the Yu family was also dumbfounded. Over the years, even Yu Jianming had to be courteous in front of the spiritual practitioner, respecting his identity and strength. But who would have thought that the spiritual practitioner was so vulnerable in front of the young master's friend? Who are you? The veins on the spiritual practitioner's forehead bulged, and his cheeks were distorted. He felt endless shame and fear. I am Yu Jianming's friend, Lin Sun said very seriously. He had never been so serious, and his words were absolutely from the heart. Unfortunately, the people of the Zheng family present did not understand. Who would believe that Lin Sun broke into the Zheng family alone and made a scene just for a friend? Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that Yu Jianfei, who was not far away, was trembling violently as if he was possessed. He seemed to be in extreme pain. At the same time, the wordless pagoda also trembled slightly at this moment. It was caused by Yu Jianming's corpse that was stored in it. Lin Sun sensed it in an instant. He moved his heart and pulled out the corpse. Young master! The old servant of the Yu family cried out sorrowfully as if he was struck by lightning. The people of the Zheng family were also stunned. Although they had already heard of Yu Jianming's death, they were still a little surprised when they saw his corpse with their own eyes. Could it be that he is? The spiritual practitioner seemed to realize something. His pupils shrank as he looked at Lin Sun. His old face suddenly became extremely pale, and he was lost. Lin Sun did not notice this. He was completely attracted by the scene that happened in front of him. The corpse of Yu Jianming, who was held in his arms, turned into a rain of light inch by inch at this moment. It fell on his younger brother, Yu Jianfei, and bathed his entire body in a dazzling halo. After a while, the rain of light disappeared. Yu Jianfei's body no longer trembled, and he regained his calmness. Moreover, his whole body glowed with an aura of being reborn, as if he had become completely different from before. After that, he let out a long breath of foul air and stood up. His gaze swept past the higher-ups of the Jing family before finally looking at Lin Sun. Lin Sun, we meet again. He smiled with a wisp of gratitude. Thank you for bringing the other half of my soul back. Brother Yu? Lin Sun was moved. Even he felt slight disbelief. How could this be? This, on the other hand, the higher-ups of the Jing family were directly dumbfounded. How could this idiot, Yu Jianfei, become another person in an instant? It really is him. It really is him. Only the spiritual practitioner felt as if he was struck by lightning when he heard the name Lin Sun. He was dumbfounded and his mind went blank. I'll explain the reason to you after I deal with the matter here, Yu Jianfei smiled. Lin Sun nodded. All right. The moment Yu Jianfei turned around and looked at the spiritual practitioner and the others, his entire body emitted a fierce and oppressive aura, like a sword that was deeply hidden in a sheath was unsheathed. I know what happened before. It's impossible to break off the engagement, but I can write a letter of divorce for you. Yu Jianfei's voice was calm. When you begged me to arrange this marriage a few years ago, I already knew this day would come, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. Letter of divorce. Jing Yunxiao's vision darkened. She hadn't even gotten married, but she was directly divorced. If she carried such a reputation, how could she face others in the future? Who are you? Jing Qianlong shouted as if he had seen a living ghost. I'm Yu Jianming and also Yu Jianfei, Yu Jianfei said indifferently. All of a sudden, all the members of the Jing family were dumbfounded, and their hearts were bleeding. If this was true, didn't it mean that if they didn't break off the engagement, Zheng Yunxiao would very likely marry Yu Jianming, the famous genius in the fire spirit state? But wasn't he already dead? How did he become like this? In the end, Zheng Yunxiao was divorced. This was the punishment Yu Jianfei gave to the Jing family. Aren't you angry that they treated your brother like this? I thought you couldn't help but want to kill a few people. After walking out of the Jing family, Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Although they were slightly shameless, they could be considered to have helped me take care of my brother all these years. An eye for an eye, Yu Jianfei said. What about you? What exactly happened? Lin Sun asked. I knew you wouldn't be able to help but ask. Yu Jianfei smiled lightheartedly. Have you heard of one soul with two bodies? One soul with two bodies. Lin Sun immediately understood. This was an extremely rare innate attribute. One soul was residing in two bodies, and it was completely different from twins. The most peculiar thing was that people who possessed this attribute could not only bring immeasurable benefits to cultivation, but even if the other body was destroyed, they wouldn't die completely. The only drawback was that the two shared the same soul, and it was bound to cause the other to become an idiot in the eyes of the world due to the lack of soul energy. This time, it was a blessing in disguise. I really experienced the feeling of death for the first time. Although I couldn't be enlightened, it gave me a new understanding of cultivation. Moreover, through this experience, I thoroughly discovered the origin mystery of the talent of one soul with two bodies. Maybe I'm likely to surpass you on the road of cultivation in the future. At this moment, Yu Jianfei was Yu Jianming, with a touch of confidence that Lin Sun was familiar with between his eyebrows. Lin Sun punched him on the shoulder and scolded with a smile. No wonder you died so quickly at that time. I was sad for nothing. But in his heart there was a kind of indescribable joy. Let's go and have a drink. Until we get drunk? Yes, until we get drunk. Chapter 946. 1,000 cups were not enough to meet a bosom friend for a long time. For Lin Sun, Yu Jianming's ability to come back to life made him feel that it was better to get drunk in this situation. Tell me the truth, don't hit me. Say it. When I chose to commit suicide at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, I really didn't have much reluctance, because I knew that I would come back to life one day. But I didn't expect that you would be so guilty. Ha 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 ha, if the dignified demon god Lin was so guilty, what would the world think? Get out. Hey, don't look so ugly. Drink, drink. Lin Sun and Yu Jiaming were drinking by the green willow lake. More than a dozen large wine jars were scattered around them. The wine was Drunken Millennium, a special brew of Qianhu City. It tasted spicy and mellow like fire in the throat. Both of them were slightly intoxicated, and if it wasn't for their cultivations, they would have probably lost consciousness long ago and fallen into a drunken dream. The Yu clan's old servant stood at a distance, smiling as he watched all of this. Just by watching, he felt very satisfied and happy. In order to avoid trouble, Thousand Illusion Sect has drawn a clear line with you. What are you going to do in the future? It's simple. I'll go my own way and comprehend my own Tao. The world is so big, where can I, Yu Jiaming, stand? Don't you hate them? Of course I hate them. I regard them as my home, but they regard me as an abandoned son. Anyway, they have done me a great favor. Even if I hate them, I won't ask for justice. It's good to cut off all ties with them. It seems that you've got over it. No, you're wrong. I haven't gotten over it. I'm not a saint who has achieved great enlightenment. Being abandoned like this, I also have a knot in my heart. Just you wait, one day, I will make the Thousand Illusion Tao sect regret this decision. That's like a man. I'm a man. After drinking, the two chatted a lot like two drunkards, chattering on the quiet green willow lake, which startled many egret. Until dusk, the setting sun dyed the green lake red. Yu Jiaming, who was full of the smell of alcohol, got up and belched, I'm leaving Qianhu City. Where to? Wandering to the ends of the world. Yu Jiaming chuckled. Then, he mounted a thin horse with mottled fur that was brought over by an old servant of the Yu family. He waved to Lin Sun and rode away. He left in a carefree and unrestrained manner. Perhaps it was just as he'd said before, he'd already died once. Even though he wasn't able to attain enlightenment, there were some things that he'd completely come to terms with. His departure this time was to walk his own path and seek his own Tao. Don't worry about not having a close friend in the future. Who in the world doesn't know you? Yu Jiaming's laughter came from afar. Lin Sun, I will go to Dongxing territory to find you. His voice gradually became indistinct. Under the setting sun, the old servant led the skinny horse. Yu Jiaming's figure swayed as he walked far away. Lin Sun watched him go away. After a while, he said with a smile, What bullsh *t, go ahead. 2 days later, in Yendu City, in a private room of the Partridge Heaven restaurant, this was the place where Lin Sun and Bai Fenglu had agreed to meet 2 days ago. Bai Fenglu, the old fool, had already arrived. When he saw Lin Sun for the first time, he sighed with emotion. Who can imagine that demon Lin, who has made the whole Shihing territory in chaos, is inviting me, Bai Fenglu, to dinner alone at this moment? As usual, this old fool was still so shameless and frivolous. Don't talk nonsense. I've come to ask you something this time, Lin Sun said angrily. Bai Fenglu rolled his eyes and said, Let me guess, is it related to leaving Shihing territory? Lin Sun was surprised. How do you know? Bai Fenglu looked complacent and said with a smile, Don't forget that I'm the man who will become the king of news. What happens in Shihing territory can't be hidden from my eyes and ears. After the explanation, Lin Sun found out that many ancient orthodoxies had already analyzed that in such a precarious situation, it was very likely that he would choose to leave. Because only in this way could he avoid many revenge attacks. Presently, the Sea Shark clan, Zhongli clan, Azure Phoenix clan, Jade Void Temple, Desolate Lightning clan. All the ancient powers have announced that anyone who dares to help you, Fiend God Lin, leave West Hing world will be their common enemy, and they will surely suffer the calamity of annihilation. Bai Fenglio's expression suddenly became serious, and he said, "At the same time, these forces have sent all kinds of forces to search for your traces in Shihing territory with all their might. Moreover, they have issued an astonishing bounty order, and it seems that they want to kill you." Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly narrowed. Only now did he realize that although the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival had come to an end, his situation had become more and more pessimistic. "It seems that they are still bullying me because I haven't killed enough people," he muttered to himself. Bai Fenglu hurriedly said, "Don't act recklessly. I heard that in order to deal with you this time, many old monsters of the King Realm are ready to move out." Lin Sun fell silent for a while. In the final analysis, they were bullying him because he was alone and had no one to rely on. Bai Fenglu sighed, "It's too difficult to fight against those ancient orthodoxies alone. It's no different from a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I advise you to calm down, no matter what, and leave Shiheng territory to lie low." Lin Sun nodded and said, "I won't act recklessly." He had originally planned to go to Dongxing territory. Although he hated those ancient orthodoxies for bullying him, he also knew that before he stepped into the King Realm, he could only avoid the sharp edge for the time being and leave the dangerous whirlpool of Shiheng territory. Of course, even if he didn't leave, Lin Sun wasn't afraid of all this. He still had many trump cards in his hand. Even if he couldn't wipe out all those ancient orthodoxies, it was enough to make them suffer a great loss. The destruction of the nests of the Black Demon Tengu clan in Shiheng territory was the best proof. That being said, Lin Sun wouldn't go to the mysterious woman in the secret realm for help if he wasn't at the end of the line. The mysterious woman promised to help him 3 times, and he had used it once. He didn't want to waste such a precious opportunity on unnecessary things. By the way, who won the first chance at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival? Lin Sun suddenly asked. Bai Fenglu shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe it was Ji Xingyao, or maybe it was Lorger, the future leader of the Miluo Palace in the Earth Imperial Universe." Speaking of this, Bai Fenglu remembered something. He said mysteriously, "Do you know that Yu Lingkong is not dead?" Sure enough, Lin Sun was shocked. Even though Bai Lingshi had already told him about this, he still felt a bit emotional when he heard Bai Fenglio's confirmation. It was indeed too difficult to kill a peerless figure like Yu Lingkong. It is said that this guy was saved by the Hall of Immortality. But because of his serious injuries, he left the Shiheng territory in a hurry and went back to the southern Xian universe to recover fully. Before he left, he said that the next time he saw you, it would be the day of your death. Bai Fenglio's expression carried a trace of seriousness. "I have to admit that Yu Lingkong's resources are simply too terrifying. You've killed him once. I suspect that no matter if it's the blessed lands of longevity or the Yu clan, both of them will stand on Yu Lingkong's side and view you as a thorn in their side." Hearing this, Lin Sun smiled. There were many forces that regarded him as an enemy, but he was still alive and well. He said casually, "This guy still doesn't learn his lesson after dying once. How dare he say such big words? Let's see who will have the last laugh." Bai Fenglu gave him a thumbs up and complimented, "I'm not impressed by anyone but you, Demon God Lin. You're able to stir up chaos in the world all by yourself. Throughout the ages and in the present world, which genius could have such courage and methods?" Lin Sun was speechless. "Can you stop annoying me like this?" Bai Fenglu grinned. "Okay, let's get down to business. You can't leave the Shiheng territory with the help of the ancient teleportation formation, but there is a way." "Tell me." According to the latest news, the boundary river between the Dongxing territory, the Shiheng territory, the Big Dipper territory and the Nanxian territory is undergoing an unprecedented change. In short, the boundary river is gradually disappearing. Disappearing? Yes, according to the analysis of some old monsters, this change is very likely to make the 4 realms, which were originally divided, merge into one again. The ancient desolation will end the state of division and return to the complete state in the ancient times. However, it is just a beginning. According to speculation, when the Great Era comes, the four realms of the ancient desolation will break the pattern of isolation and completely return to a complete world. And this change is also regarded as one of the signs of the coming Great Era. At that time, the four realms will be united, and the ancient desolation is bound to show a new pattern of the Great Era. Speaking of this, Bai Fenglu couldn't help but feel excited. The four realms had been separated from each other for countless years, blocking the way of countless practitioners. To ordinary cultivators, traversing a world to cultivate in another world was simply more difficult than ascending the heavens because the dangerous and unfathomable boundary river obstructed their path. Now, the signs of the four realms being united had appeared, and an unprecedented great era was bound to come. Who wouldn't be excited? Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved. As far as he knew, the four realms of the ancient desolation were indeed a complete world in the ancient times. But later, because of a shocking change, the ancient desolation was broken and divided into the four realms, which had continued to this day. If there was a possibility of the four realms being united and restored to a complete state, it was indeed an unprecedented change for any practitioner. Of course, it is still too early to say this, but it is an indisputable fact that the power of the boundary river is fading. Nowadays, many practitioners in the Shihing territory have begun to explore the secret of the shocking change of the boundary river, trying to find a way to the Nirvana world. Bai Fenglu said, "If you want to leave, you may choose to cross the boundary river." Cross the boundary river? Lin Sun was thoughtful. Yes, think about it first. If you really decide to do so, I can arrange a new identity for you. You can join a team and set off in 3 days. Chapter 947. 3 days later. Yen capital, outside the western suburbs of the city gate. Dawn had just broken, and a group of people were already waiting there. Everyone, let me introduce him to you. This is Lin Xia, a spiritual celestial master who is proficient in seeking fortune and avoiding calamity, as well as probing acupoints and looking for meridians. This time, he will be crossing the Realm River to travel and cultivate in the East Victory domain. I'll have to trouble everyone to look after him along the way. Bai Fenglu introduced them warmly. Lin Xia was Lin Sun's new name to hide his identity. After deciding to cross the border river, he had already used the great formless skill to change his appearance and temperament. The group of people looked at Lin Sun, who was beside Bai Fenglu, and found that he was just a young man at the Tao Insight realm. His appearance was not outstanding, so they looked away. Lin Xia, let me introduce you to these cultivators. Bai Fenglu chattered for a long time. Obviously, he was very familiar with this group of people. But Lin Sun frowned imperceptibly. This team was considered elite. There were 16 people in total, and each of them had a strong and capable aura. The strongest was at the Reincarnation Development realm, and the weakest was at the Tao Insight realm. But in Lin Sun's opinion, it was not enough for such a team to cross the extremely dangerous border river that even the old monsters of the King realm did not dare to enter easily. Don't worry, these are all ruthless people who often appear near the border river. They are an experienced team of adventurers. Bai Fenglu seemed to see through Lin Sun's doubts and explained telepathically. Bai Fenglu seemed to see through Lin Sun's doubts and explained telepathically. The boundary river may be extremely dangerous, but for ruthless people like them, they have their own ways to save their lives. This time, they were hired to protect a mysterious person across the boundary river to the Dongxing territory on the other side. If you go with them, you can conceal your identity, and it'll be relatively safer for you to cross the boundary river. Lin Sun nodded. He had heard that although the border river was extremely dangerous, there were many spiritual materials and treasures that were rarely seen in the outside world. Many years ago, there were many explorers and desperados who went there in search of wealth or opportunities. Similarly, there was no lack of villains who had committed atrocities and chosen to escape into the border river to avoid being killed. Up until now, the area within the Boundary River had long since become a place where explorers and outlaws gathered. Moreover, numerous dark and evil powers of various sizes had been formed there. Of course, this was the outer region of the Boundary River. The depths of the Boundary River were still like a restricted area, and even these explorers and desperados rarely dared to step foot into it. It was obvious that the team that Bai Feng Lu had found was made up of a group of adventurers. Moreover, they had been through a lot and were very experienced. Let's go. It won't be long before I go to the East Victory Realm. That place is the heart of the ancient Desolation Realm, and it's called the Home of All Saints. Similarly, whether I can become the King of News whose name has shaken the world depends entirely on whether I can make a name for myself in the East Victory Realm. Before leaving, Bai Fenglu appeared very heroic, ambitious, and complacent. Take care. Lin Sun nodded. During the first test of the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival, Lin Sun had obtained many ice mountain fire lotuses. He refined one himself and obtained the fire-refining Star River method. He gave the rest to Yu Jianming and Bai Fenglu respectively. It could be said that Lin Sun didn't have many friends in the West Heng realm, and Yu Jianming and Bai Fenglu were undoubtedly the two most trustworthy. Whoosh! In the clouds, a treasure ship rushed toward the easternmost place of the West Heng realm, crushing the airwave. On the treasure ship, the members of the team of adventurers were discussing something, while Lin Sun was thinking in one of the rooms. They had set off for several hours. After a short contact, Lin Sun had a general understanding of this team of adventurers. The leader of this team was a man with a vigorous temperament like a cheetah. His name was Ko Xing. He was slender and thin, with bronze skin and a cold expression. He carried 2 sabers on his back, and his every move revealed a sense of competence and neatness. He had the cultivation of the upper level of the wheel-developing realm. In addition, there was also a man and a woman who caught Lin Sun's attention. One of them, nicknamed Green-Faced, was majestic and mighty, and his skin was covered with dense tattoos, especially his face, which was covered with fine green veins, giving people a very creepy feeling. According to the introduction of Bai Fenglu, this person came from the Green Blood clan and was born with an extremely keen insight to danger. He had the cultivation of the initial level of the wheel-developing realm and was taciturn. The other one, nicknamed Qilian, was charming and enchanting, with a hot and sexy figure, a pair of seductive peach blossom eyes, and 2 small red snakes hanging from her ears. Like Green-Faced, she was also in the initial level of the wheel-developing realm and had a shrewd character. This team was obviously led by these 3 people. Although the rest of the people had different cultivation, their auras were extremely fierce. At first glance, Lin Sun could tell that they were experienced veterans. In addition, there was also a mysterious person in the team. This team was also hired by this mysterious person. When they boarded this treasure ship, Lin Sun had seen this person before, but he was a little surprised because the mysterious person was actually a sickly girl. The girl was about 17 or 18 years old, with a beautiful face and a gentle temperament. She was dressed as a man and wore black clothes, but her eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and her skin was abnormally pale. She walked like a willow in the wind, giving people a feeling of sickly delicateness. In the conversation between Ko Xing, Green-Faced, and Qilian, they all called this girl Miss Lu. Knowing that there was an extra person like Lin Sun on this trip, Miss Lu was obviously a little conflicted. After some discussion, she finally allowed Lin Sun to go with them. Miss Lu also wanted to go to the Dongxing boundary, but Lin Sun keenly noticed that she seemed to have a very heavy heart. Her eyebrows were tightly furrowed along the way, and she seemed to be very quiet in her room. Lin Sun had originally planned to inquire about some information about the Dongxing boundary, but he could only give up now. Buzz. Before long, Lin soon casually set up a simple restriction to isolate the outside world from prying. Then, Xia Ji appeared. She had just woken up, and as soon as she saw Lin Sun, the first thing she said was, "Lin Sun, I'm hungry." Lin Sun was speechless. Fortunately, he had already expected this scene, and had prepared some food in advance. The grains of translucent, snow-white, and soft rice were placed within a verdant lotus leaf, and it emanated a refreshing fragrance and dense spirit energy. In addition, there was a plate of braised sea shark meat and a plate of roasted cyan phoenix wings, both of which were very large in size. They looked, smelled, and were enough for more than 10 people to enjoy together. This kind of food was, of course, extremely rare. It was the spoils of war left by Lin Sun when he killed Sha Luchan and seriously injured Qing Lianer. Now it was cooked by him as food for Xia Ji to enjoy. If the experts of these two clans saw it, they would definitely go berserk with anger. Holding the bowl and chopsticks, Xia Ji sat there quietly, and then began to chew and enjoy. Her speed was neither fast nor slow, but her appetite was very big, and she never stopped eating from beginning to end. Lin Sun looked at this scene with a smile. After a while, he thought of something and said regretfully, "It's a pity that I've eaten up the black demon dog meat. It's delicious. Whether it's stewed, stir-fried, barbecued, or fried, it's the best." Xia Ji ignored him and continued to eat. Her delicate body was like a bottomless pit, devouring one portion of rice after another, and the cyan lotus leaves beside her were piled up into a thick pile. If Lin Sun hadn't prepared well, he would not have been able to satisfy Xia Ji's appetite. After a long time, Xia Ji put down the bowl and chopsticks, raised her eyes as clear as the crescent moon, looked at Lin Sun and said seriously, "If there's something good in the future, you can't enjoy it alone." Lin Sun also promised seriously, "It won't happen again." Xia Ji nodded and suddenly said, "I have a question." "Go ahead." Lin Sun picked up a cup of tea and asked curiously. After thinking for a long time, Xia Ji said, "Lin Sun, how many women do you have outside?" Puff. Lin Sun spat out a mouthful of tea, choked and coughed. He stared at the little girl in front of him strangely and said angrily, "Why do you suddenly ask such a question? Do I look like the kind of person who likes to flirt with women?" Xia Ji frowned and thought for a while before saying, "Yes." Lin Sun was speechless. He had never been in contact with a woman since he started his cultivation. How could he have a woman outside? Sometimes Lin Sun felt that he was more lonely than a sadhu, but now he was slandered by Xia Ji, which was absolutely intolerable. However, when he was about to say something, Xia Ji said, "You don't have to explain. I don't like you lying to me." Lin Sun almost fainted. It was so unjust. If he really had so many confidants, it would be fine. But the point was that he didn't have any until now. "Anyway, if you want to marry a wife in the future, you have to get through me first." Xia Ji looked at Lin Sun, and her beautiful and flawless face was full of seriousness. "Why?" Lin Sun was annoyed. "Because it will be very difficult to accommodate a second person besides you in my world," Xia Ji answered as if it was a matter of course. Lin Sun was speechless. He suddenly found that when facing Xia Ji, who was serious, no matter what he said, it seemed very powerless. Because she didn't listen to him at all. If I had known this, I would have been in contact with more girls. Lin Sun was stunned and regretted that he had lived too monotonous in the early years. He actually didn't hook up with some beautiful girls to enrich his feelings on the road of cultivation. It was so not worth it. "What did you say?" Xia Ji raised her eyebrows, with a rare questioning expression on her extremely beautiful face. "Nothing. I am thinking about going to Dongxing territory." Lin Sun changed the topic decisively. He felt that if they continued to talk about it, he would definitely collapse under Xia Ji's arbitrary and calm word. "Then you think about it yourself. I'm going to sleep." Xia Ji was no longer serious. After eating and drinking, she began to feel sleepy as usual. Chapter 948. This was a golden message tree leaf, a gift from Bai Fenglu. When Bai Fenglu heard that Lin Sun was going to Dongxing territory to inquire about Yun Qingbai, he was shocked at first, but he didn't ask much in the end. Instead, he spent a day returning to the residence of the Wind Talker clan. When he returned, he gave this golden message tree leaf to Lin Sun. It recorded a battle scene about Yun Qingbai, which was accidentally seen by the secret agent of the Wind Talker clan. However, because Yun Qingbai's influence in the ancient Desolation realm was too great, this news was carefully sealed by the high-level officials of the Wind Talker clan before it had time to spread. This time, it was all thanks to Bai Fenglu's appearance that they managed to obtain this golden message tree leaf. Otherwise, as long as Yun Qingbai was still alive, the information recorded on it would probably never see the light of day again. With a strange wave, the golden message tree leaf unfolded, flowing with a magnificent luster, and finally turned into a light curtain. On the light curtain, a white-robed man stood on the shore of a blood sea. His clothes and black hair were fluttering in the wind, revealing a calm and indifferent face. He was tall and straight, like a sword piercing the air. His face was incomparably handsome. Just by standing there casually, he had a great spirit of looking down on the world. His style was peerless. The blood sea was surging, demonic and terrifying. In a roar, a huge blood-colored dragon soared into the sky, setting off thousands of blood waves. Its body was as thick as a house, and it was thousands of meters long. It was covered with cold and fine blood-colored dragon scales, and its pair of blood-colored eyes were like a lake, reflecting everything in the world. It raised its head and roared while its body resided in space, and an indescribably terrifying aura suffused the heavens and the earth. It caused the entire sea of blood to rumble and surge while space in an area of 5,000 kilometers collapsed inch by inch, and its might was terrifying to the extreme. Just looking at it made Lin Sun feel a kind of oppressive aura. A blood-colored dragon that had stepped into the half-step king realm. Moreover, because of the dragon's breath in its bloodline, its combat power was more terrifying and powerful than other half-step king realm experts. The white-robed man moved. He stepped in the void and moved straight forward. His whole body emitted a fierce sword intent, like a shining sun, dazzling. Boom! The blood dragon swung its tail and unleashed a terrifying mystic art. Streaks of blood-colored runes surged towards the white-robed man. However, these attacks hadn't even approached him when they seemed as if they'd collided with an invisible wall, and they dispersed with a bang and were actually unable to cause any harm. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. This was the invisible power of Sword Tao, but it seemed to be real. It protected the white-robed man and made him invincible. The blood dragon seemed to be enraged. Its sparkling and resplendent blood-colored body glowed, and a circle of ripples that looked like Tao patterns appeared and spread out in the void. Boom! The heavens and the earth shook. The blood-colored Tao markings were obscure and profound, and they were filled with the aura of the grand Tao that belonged to the Dragon Clan. It caused the heavens and the earth to dim while all things collapsed, and it was terrifying to the extreme. According to Lin Sun's own calculation, it would take a lot of effort for him to resolve this blow without the help of the wordless pagoda and insignificant bow. However, the white-robed man merely swung his hand casually before a strand of almost ethereal sword insight slashed out, and it easily destroyed all of this. Clang! Then, in the eyes of the white-robed man, a pair of blazing divine rainbows suddenly burst out, intertwined and fused together, and turned into a Taoist sword. The sword was 3 feet and 3 inches long, 4 fingers wide, and covered with dense obscure patterns. As soon as it appeared, the heavens and the earth trembled, and the void was in disorder. An indescribable heavenly sword intent emerged in the world, which seemed to be able to amaze both ancient and modern times. Lin Sun felt a stabbing pain in front of his eyes, and he couldn't see anything. At the same time, the screen of light suddenly disappeared and ended abruptly. No one knew if the blood dragon still had a chance to survive under that incomparably breathtaking sword strike that reached the heavens. There was silence in the room. Lin Sun recalled the sword in his mind. The more he tried to figure it out, the more palpitations he felt. The aura of the Grand Tao was too strong and vast, sharp and terrifying to the extreme. Unconsciously, the back of Lin Sun's clothes had been soaked with a layer of cold sweat. Yun Qi Bai. The white-robed man was the legendary figure who was known as the first sword practitioner in the ancient Desolation territory. He was known to be invincible under the King realm. But for Lin Sun, this man only had one identity, that was, the culprit who killed all the relatives and friends of the Lin family. 5 years ago, he was already so powerful, Lin Sun murmured with a heavy heart. Although it was only a short scene, Lin Sun realized how terrible his enemy was after witnessing Yun Qingbai's battle with his own eyes. This was a battle that took place 5 years ago. For a peerless figure like Yun Qingbei, 5 years was enough for his strength to undergo a great transformation again. Even Lin Sun couldn't figure out how powerful Yun Qingbei had become today. His energy is extremely pure, his foundation is extremely deep, and his grasp of the energy of the Grand Tao has even attained perfection. If I were to fight him now, then I only have 20% confidence in defeating him, and I don't even have 10% confidence in killing him. Beside him, Xia Ji said softly. Her voice was clear and sweet like the sound of nature. But her words made Lin Sun look more and more serious. In the battle just now, Yun Qingbei was only at the upper level of the reincarnation development realm, but Xia Ji admitted that she couldn't kill him. It could be imagined how powerful Yun Qingbei was. It should be noted that at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, when Xia Ji killed Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan and other peerless figures, she only used one move to wipe them out one by one. But it's also impossible for him to kill me. Xia Ji commented seriously. Her beautiful face, which was enough to overshadow the world, was full of thoughts. If you are his enemy, it seems that you have little chance of winning if you only compete with your own combat power. It was a battle 5 years ago, Lin Sun reminded her. Then it's even more hopeless, Xia Ji said casually. Xia Ji said casually. This was Xia Ji. She would never deceive Lin Sun, nor would she speak tactfully. She didn't mean to hurt Lin Sun. Lin Sun was silent for a while. The enemy's strength was completely beyond his expectation. At this moment, he deeply understood that even if he found Yun Qingbei now, it was doomed to be hopeless for him to take revenge. But I'm more optimistic about you, Xia Ji suddenly said. When did I fall to the point where I need you to comfort me? Lin Sun said with a wry smile. I'm serious, Xia Ji said. Do you think I'm wrong about you? Lin Sun didn't know how to answer, but he enjoyed it. Yun Qingbei's peerless power just now had a great impact on him. Believe me, you just started a little later than him. You are destined to surpass him in the future. Xia Ji's words were calm, but there was a sense of certainty in them. Undoubtedly, this was a kind of absolute confidence in Lin Sun. Then she went to sleep. Yun Qingbei might be very powerful, but she wasn't interested in him at all, and he couldn't affect her at all. Perhaps in her world, except for cultivation, there was only room for Lin Sun. In the following time, Lin Sun repeatedly watched the scenes of the battle recorded on the golden leaf. But different from before, his mentality had changed. He became calm and firm, observing the strength of the enemy to verify his own strength. The best way to defeat the enemy was to thoroughly understand the enemy first. Yun Qingbei's strength shocked Lin Sun, but it also aroused his unprecedented fighting spirit. He was never a person who gave up easily. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made such achievements after coming out of a remote prison. As Xia Ji said, Yun Qingbei's advantage was that he set foot on the road of cultivation earlier than Lin Sun. Before Lin Sun was born, Yun Qingbei was already a well-known peerless figure in the heaven-reaching sword sect. Moreover, Yun Qingbai's strength today was not glorious, and he didn't use the power he possessed. At least, without the spiritual vein he dug out from Lin Sun, he was doomed to not have today's prestige. In contrast, the only thing Lin Sun lacked at present might be time. You're getting stronger, but so am I. One day, I will become even stronger than you. After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath and became more determined. His whole person seemed to have undergone a transformation, with a clear and ethereal aura. Half a month later, the treasure ship carrying Lin Sun and his party finally arrived at their destination. Wenshui City was located near the easternmost part of the West Heng territory, adjacent to the Boundary River. Compared to the past, Wenshui City had recently become abnormally lively. Many cultivators from all over the world had gathered here. The reason was very simple. The Boundary River had undergone a shocking change and was gradually receding, which was very likely a sign of the unification of the four realms. In order to explore the origin of this shocking change, many strong practitioners in the West Heng territory had been attracted. Moreover, recently, many strong practitioners who had gone to explore the Boundary River had more or less obtained some opportunities. There were ancient treasures that had never been seen before, rare and strange spiritual materials, and some relics and broken antiques that only existed in ancient times. These items had occasionally been discovered in the past, but not as frequently as they had been discovered recently. When the waves receded, they would reveal the shells and pearls left on the beach. Similarly, if the Boundary River was really gradually receding, then some of the secrets and opportunities hidden in it would inevitably emerge in the world. In any case, all these signs undoubtedly indicated that some kind of shocking change was indeed taking place in the Boundary River. Big news! An expert of the Silver Electric Sable clan risked his life to enter an ancient relic in the Boundary River and found a broken blood-stained spear. Although it was mottled and decayed, the blood on it was suffused with a trace of a true saint's aura. If nothing unexpected happens, this broken ancient spear has drunk the blood of a saint. When Lin Sun and his party entered Wenshui City, they happened to hear this sensational news that had just come back today. Chapter 949. A broken spear that was suspected to have been stained with the blood of a saint. This news was truly shocking. The Boundary River had changed, and such a treasure had appeared. It was easy to imagine how many cultivators would come to search for it once the news got out. Since ancient times, there has always been a rumor that in ancient times, there was an unprecedented war between the saints. At that time, the sky was covered in a rain of blood, all things were in darkness, and the world was filled with an aura of destruction as if it was the end of the world. This strange phenomenon lasted for 100 days. Because of this saint war, the ancient desolation realm was severely damaged, and it was divided into 4 great realms, which have continued to this day. And that Boundary River is the crack of the ancient desolation realm, where all living beings fought the most fiercely. On the way, the charming and enchanting Qi Lian said softly, "Now it seems that this rumor may very well be true." The group rested for a while in Wenshui City, then flew toward the Boundary River several hundred li away from the city. Along the way, they could see many groups of cultivators moving. They were in groups of 3 to 5, flying in the void. It was a spectacular sight. Among them were explorers who often appeared near the Boundary River, and there were also some cultivators who had recently arrived from all over the Western Heng realm. There were even cultivators from ancient powers. The change in the Boundary River has attracted the attention of everyone in the world. This place is destined to become a place of trouble. There will be many disturbances. Ko Xing, who was in the lead, spoke. He carried 2 sabers on his back and had a sharp and cold temperament. Seeing this lively and noisy scene, he couldn't help but frown. "We must act quickly." Immediately, the group quickened their pace. In front of the Boundary River, a strange and vast silver current rolled down from the sky, surging through the void, and then pouring into the seemingly endless boundary river. From a distance, the sky and the water were connected, vast and turbulent. It didn't look like a river at all, but a boundless sea, lying there like a barrier between worlds. In the boundary river, thunder and lightning roared, and time and space were in disorder. Sometimes, a terrifying black hole flashed, releasing a destructive aura that seemed to want to devour everything. This was the boundary river. Blocking the four great realms of the ancient Desolation realm, it was like a natural moat, blocking the path of countless cultivators. The border river was also regarded as a famous dangerous place in the ancient Desolation realm. There were many strange and ominous things in it. It was mysterious and terrifying. There was once a true king who tried to cross the border river and reach the other side of the world, but he fell halfway, not even his corpse remaining. It was said that the one who killed this king was merely an unremarkable red fish. Moreover, there were many similar legends, and it caused the boundary river to become a forbidden area. Even the old fellows at the king realm weren't willing to set foot in it rashly. However, unlike in the past, following the shocking changes that occurred, the boundary river today was no longer as violent and vicious as before, becoming comparatively quieter. But even then, it could still be said to be dangerous, mysterious, and ominous. When Lin Sun and the others arrived, they were a little stunned. Because the banks of the boundary river had actually been sealed off by a group of cultivator powers, and they'd set up a barrier there. Anyone who intended to enter or leave the boundary river had to pass through an inspection. At this moment, there were already many practitioners lined up in a long line, waiting to be inspected. All of them seemed to be very well behaved. "What's going on?" Ko Xing, who was in the lead, stopped a cultivator and questioned him. "Those are experts from the Thousand Illusion Dao sect. They sealed off this area in order to capture demonic god Lin and prevent him from escaping the West Hung world through the boundary river," explained the cultivator patiently. The cultivator explained patiently, "Now, it's not just this region. All the regions near the World River in the other regions of Western Hung world are under the control of different ancient factions. Their goal is to capture Fiend Celestial Lin. So it was to capture demonic god Lin." Ko Xing, green-faced assassin, and Qi Lian came to a sudden understanding. Only Lin Sun raised his brows as he thought to himself, "Bai Fenglu is right. These ancient orthodoxies are going all out in order to capture me. How could a peerless figure like demonic god Lin be captured so easily?" Green-faced assassin grunted coldly. "These ancient orthodoxies are clearly bullying others. Deaths are unavoidable during the battles during the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival. Could it be that only they're allowed to kill demonic god Lin, but demonic god Lin isn't allowed to counterattack?" Qi Lian had a look of contempt and disdain. Lin Sun was surprised. He never expected green-faced assassin and Qi Lian to mention his injustice. "Cut it out. Be it demonic god Lin or those ancient orthodoxies, it's not something people like us can discuss." Ko Xing, who was leading the group, berated with a frown. Immediately, green-faced assassin and Qi Lian shut their mouth. "The demonic god Lin you speak of is that Lin Sun who slayed a group of elites at the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival?" Suddenly, Miss Lo, who was walking in the middle of the group, spoke. She was dressed in black and was disguised as a man. Her beautiful face was pale, and she exuded a sickly aura. "That's right." Ko Xing nodded. Miss Lu tersely acknowledged and did not speak further. She seemed to have something on her mind as her brows were tightly knitted. Everyone waited patiently in line for 5 minutes before it was their turn to be inspected. A Thousand Illusion Dao sect disciple held a bronze disc that shimmered with spiritual patterns. It suffused a resplendent glow as he inspected Ko Xing and company one by one. The bronze disc was known as the Illusion Breaker Mirror. Any cultivator who cast an illusion to disguise themselves would be exposed. Unfortunately, although it was mysterious, it was ineffective against the grand formless skill. This was not an illusion but an ancestral skill of the Green Hill Divine Fox family. It was so marvelous that even the old freaks in the King realm could not see through it, let alone a mere illusion breaker mirror. Lin Sun accepted the inspection calmly and passed it smoothly. However, just when he was about to leave, he inadvertently noticed a familiar figure in the corner of his eye. That person was wearing a purple dress. Her figure was graceful, her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, her face was as still as water, her forehead was white and shiny, her eyes were clear and bright, and her whole body was surrounded by a mellow and holy aura, looking mysterious and transcendent. It was Loka, the future leader of the Miluo Palace from the Earth Imperial Universe. At this time, she was talking with a young man in a feather robe beside her. She behaved in a demure manner, like an orchid in an empty valley. Why was she here? Lin Sun was stunned. He immediately withdrew his gaze, stopped thinking about it, and walked forward. There was no enmity between him and Loka. Moreover, they had never quarreled at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, so he would not have any other ideas because of her appearance. Loka, is that demon god Lin really so terrible? On the other side, the young man in a feather robe frowned. Loka thought for a moment and said, like you and me, he has set foot on the peerless path, and he also has a holy treasure. Before Loka finished speaking, the eyes of the young man in a feather robe lit up. Is it true? Do you recognize the origin of that holy treasure? Loka shook her head. I can only recognize that it is a pagoda made of divine iron of creation. Its power is not very terrifying, but it can restrain the power of the immortal hall. Obviously, it is extraordinary. Divine iron of creation. The eyes of the young man in a feather robe surged with scorching divine light, as if he was staring at an extremely tempting prey. His whole body exuded a frightening power, causing the faces of many practitioners nearby to change, and their hearts to be filled with horror. A legendary treasure like the divine creation metal is a divine item that can drive sages crazy. And for fiend celestial Lin to possess a pagoda made of divine creation metal, that treasure is definitely no trifling matter. There was a touch of fanaticism in the tone of the young man in a feather robe. Loka, do you think it is possible that demon god Lin will choose to cross the boundary river and leave the West Hing territory? Loka knew that the young man in a feather robe had his eyes on the holy treasure in Lin Sun's hands, so he could not help but remind, if Yu Lingkong hadn't been saved by the immortal hall, he would have died in his hands. The young man in a feather robe was stunned, and then a playful smile appeared on his lips. Yu Lingkong? He is just a peerless talent cultivated by a family of sages with a huge amount of cultivation resources. If I were to fight with him, he would also lose. There was a trace of disdain in his words, and he seemed extremely confident. Loka frowned, but did not say anything in the end. The young man in a feather robe was called Shun Baixin, and he came from an ancient family of sages. His family's heritage was even more profound than the Yu clan's, and Shun Baixin was regarded as a little monster of the Shun clan. He had a heaven-defying talent, an amazing bloodline, and a domineering and flamboyant temperament. If it were not for the fact that he needed Shun Baixuan's help, Loka would not be willing to come into contact with him. There was no other reason than that this guy was a devil incarnate. Wherever he went, he would cause trouble. He was so fierce that he was a complete mess. And now, he had obviously set his eyes on demon god Lin, which gave Loka a headache. She knew very well how powerful demon god Lin was. If Shun Baixin provoked him, there was bound to be a bloody battle. Regardless of the final outcome, the consequences were not what Loka wanted to see. I'm going to the Boundary River to find something. If you have other ideas, then I can only act alone, Loka said indifferently. How can I have other ideas? Shun Baixin smiled. Of course, if we meet demon god Lin on the way, we can borrow his holy treasure to play with. Loka frowned and finally sighed in his heart. He did not try to persuade Shun Baixin anymore. This guy was so reckless that it was impossible to persuade him. What's more, Loka did not think that they would meet Lin so coincidentally, so he did not refuse to let Shun Baixian go with him. Not long after, the two also set out for the Boundary River. 4 hours after Lin Sun and the others entered the Boundary River, a group of murderous experts suddenly rushed over from the bank of the Boundary River. Each of them had an amazing aura, and they were led by a total of 6 half-step king realm existences. All of a sudden, there was dead silence. Everyone stared with their eyes wide open. They did not know what had happened and why so many experts had appeared. It was obvious that they were from the same force. Have you seen this girl? The leader of the group was an old man with a childish complexion and white hair. He had a gloomy expression on his face as he spoke indifferently. In his hand was a scroll, and on the scroll was a beautiful and charming young girl. Her brows were tightly furrowed and her skin was pale. Chapter 950. Yes. The successor of the Thousand Illusion Tao sect who guarded the Boundary River changed his expression slightly. He realized how terrifying this group of experts was and didn't dare to neglect them. 4 hours ago, this lady entered the Boundary River with a group of explorers. Do you recognize those explorers? The old man asked coldly. Buzz. The man hurriedly took out the delusion breaker mirror and rummaged through it. After a while, he finally found the scenes of Lin Sun and his companions being examined. It's them. The old man's gaze swept across Ko Xing, the green-faced assassin, Qi Lian, and Lin Sun, and finally fell on Miss Lo. It's her. The experts near the old man revealed a trace of killing intent, and they seemed to be ready to make a move. Let's go. Immediately, the group rushed towards the Boundary River like a gust of wind. Who are they? They're so scary. It doesn't seem like they're from our West Hing boundary. It's going to be chaotic. The Boundary River is going to change, and it's bound to cause many disturbances here. The discussions in the field were ceaseless, and all the cultivators were surprised and bewildered. The group of people just now were like gods of death that had walked out of hell, and they were filled with terrifying killing intent, especially when there were 6 half-step king realm experts among them. The Boundary River was vast and surging. Storms could be seen everywhere, and space-time turbulence could be seen. Frequent natural disasters wreaked havoc here, and it was an extremely horrifying scene. After entering the Boundary River, Ko Xing took out a dark gray treasured ship and carried everyone forward carefully in the void. The green-faced assassin was guiding the way. Qi Lian led the other explorers to guard different corners of the treasured ship, and they were ready for battle. According to them, after entering the Boundary River, there would be danger at all times, and even experienced experts didn't dare to take it lightly. There were too many strange and ominous things in the Boundary River. The sky was dim, and some places were shattered, turning into terrifying black holes that rotated, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Along the way, they could occasionally see groups of cultivators, but as time went by, the cultivators on the road gradually became fewer and fewer. Suddenly, a strange sound could be heard. It sounded like sobbing and sobbing. Although it was very indistinct, it was very real, as if it came from the end of the world. Ko Xing's expression changed to one of shock as he looked into the distance. A devilish blood-colored meditation cushion had suddenly appeared on the surface of the surging and surging gray river in the distance, and it was floating indeterminately. On the meditation cushion, the figure of a woman that was so close to him was weeping with her head lowered, and her neck had been pierced diagonally by a blood-red sword, causing one to shudder with fear. The others were also shocked. There was a woman weeping on the blood-colored praying mat, her voice mournful. The blood sword had pierced through her neck, yet she seemed to be completely unaware. This scene was a little scary. In just an instant, Ko Xing seemed to have seen something very terrifying. He shouted in a low voice, "Run!" What was that? Lin Sun wanted to ask, but before he opened his mouth, Ko Xing and others had already steered the treasure ship to escape from this area. Rumble soon, Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. In the area where they were just now, the void exploded, the sky collapsed, and the raging river turned into a turbulent whirlpool, engulfing that area. Lin Sun was moved. If he had delayed just now, he would have died in an instant. It's said that it's the remnant consciousness of a saint who fell here in ancient times. It can't be erased after the erosion of tens of thousands of years. In the border river, as long as you meet this kind of ghost, you must leave immediately, otherwise you are doomed to die here. Qilian, who was nearby, seemed to see Lin Sun's doubts and explained in a low voice. The remnant consciousness of a saint. Lin Sun unconsciously thought of the army of ghosts he had seen in the burial sea of Tao in the Soul Oblivion Sea. But in comparison, the remnant consciousness of a saint was undoubtedly more terrible. The treasure ship continued to move forward, and the surrounding atmosphere became more and more oppressive. The world was dim, the river was tumbling, the space and time were flashing in the void, and thunder and lightning and storms were raging constantly. This made Lin Sun feel frightened. If he came here alone, he would never dare to go in rashly. It was no wonder that the border river was called a forbidden area in legends since ancient times, and even the old monsters of the King realm dared not set foot in it easily. The scene in it was really terrible. According to Qilian, if they wanted to reach the Dongxing territory on the other side, they would have to cross the border river for at least half a month. Moreover, as they went deeper into the border river, the strange and ominous things they encountered would only become more and more terrible and dangerous. The only thing to be thankful for was that Ko Xing and others were all experienced veterans who had entered and exited the border river many times. With them leading the way, they could avoid some fatal dangers. "Boss, look, that white bone mountain has appeared again," one of the explorers exclaimed. In an area far away, the river was tumbling, and a mountain of white bones gushed out. There was rolling blood flowing out of the white bone mountain, which was eerie and creepy. No one knew how tall the white bone mountain was. Among the white bones piled up on it, there were flowers of blood. The petals were extremely red, and the flowing blood was pouring out from the pistils of the flowers. The buried spirit mountain, the scarlet purgatory flower. Ko Xing and others were also horrified. They didn't expect that they would encounter such a great danger less than 4 hours after entering the border river. Buried Spirit Mountain was where the souls of ancient experts were buried. On the other hand, the scarlet purgatory flower was an even more terrifying existence. It used the flesh and blood of experts as nourishment. Once one came into contact with it, it was like falling into a blood-colored purgatory, and one's body would be instantly obliterated. Normally speaking, no matter if it was buried Spirit Mountain or the scarlet purgatory flower, they only existed during the ancient times, and only the most dangerous and bloody places would give birth to such ominous things. But so long as they appeared, it would definitely mean that an ominous calamity would descend. "Let's go. Quickly." Ko Xing's expression was unsightly. He'd originally thought that all the strange and ominous things in the border river would become much quieter after the sudden change in the border river. Never had he imagined that they'd encountered two strange scenes not long after they'd started. First, the Saint Remnant Will had appeared, and now, buried Spirit Mountain and the scarlet purgatory flower had appeared. This caused the hearts of Ko Xing and the others to be enveloped by a layer of shadow. If there are great figures of Buddhist cultivators here, then buried Spirit Mountain and the scarlet purgatory flower are great fortuitous encounters to them. Suddenly, Miss Lu said softly, "It will be of immeasurable benefit to them to hone their dauntless Zen mind and Arhat golden body." A trace of surprise flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He keenly noticed that this sickly girl seemed to know many unknown secrets. Ko Xing and the others couldn't care less about this. When they saw such a strange scene, they had already driven the treasure ship to escape with all their strength, fearing that there would be an ominous calamity. Just a moment later, Ko Xing's face changed dramatically and he shouted, "Oh no! Get ready to fight!" At the same time, Lin Sun spread out his spiritual awareness, but he didn't find any danger at all. Just when he was surprised, he saw that Ko Xing and the others had stopped the treasure ship in the void and looked ahead, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Do you see that? The gray mist is called ominous mist of disaster by us explorers. Once it appears, danger is bound to come, Qilian explained in a low voice. She had a good impression of Lin Sun, so she took good care of him along the way and occasionally gave him some advice on how to seek luck and avoid misfortune in the border river. Lin Sun looked over and saw wisps of gray mist floating out from the raging river in the distance, which was as hazy as smoke and clouds. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, and he felt uneasy and cold all over. The mist didn't seem to be threatening, but it revealed a strange aura. Here it comes. Ko Xing's face was solemn. At the same time, Lin Sun also saw a mass of dark clouds emerging silently in the gray mist. Looking carefully, it was not a real dark cloud, but a black moth shaped like a swallowtail butterfly with scarlet eyes and snow-white fangs. Each moth was the size of a palm, with black wings and wisps of gray mist. Just like the devil moths from hell, they looked strange and ferocious. They were numerous, dense, and covered the heavens and the earth. When looked at from afar, they were like a dark and dense layer of clouds that gave others a practically suffocating feeling of oppression. Ghost-winged soul moths. It's them. We're in big trouble. We're doomed this time. All of a sudden, Ko Xing and the other explorers' faces changed dramatically, their bodies stiffened and their hearts chilled. They were experienced and had heard more than once over the years that wherever ghost-winged soul moths appeared, there would be no chance of survival. Is it terrible? Lin Sun frowned. Unexpectedly, the one who explained was Miss Lu. The ghost-winged soul moth is a type of mutated life-form from the ancient times. Its body is completely formed from soul power. In other words, ordinary martial arts methods won't work if one wants to kill them. One must use techniques that specifically restrain the soul in order to kill them. They live by devouring the soul fragments of fallen experts. The most terrifying thing about them is that after they devour the soul fragments, the secret techniques, inheritances, and other memories left behind in the soul fragments of experts will be grasped by them. When used in battle, they will erupt with unimaginable might. Lin Sun was shocked. Ghost-winged soul moths were really strange. Then does Miss Lu have a way to deal with them? Ko Xing couldn't help asking. I have a string of bells in my hand that should be able to restrain them, but I need you to fight with all your strength to restrain them. Miss Lu looked sickly, but at this moment, a wisp of resolute confidence flashed across her clear eyes. All right. We'll fight with all our strength. Ko Xing and the others nodded in agreement without hesitation. Child Lin, it's not safe to stay here for long. You'd better go back to your room and hide. Once the battle starts, I'm afraid we won't be able to take care of you, Qilian said to Lin Sun and advised him to hide. Lin Sun was stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If other practitioners knew that he, the demon god Lin, was being taken care of like this, what would they think? However, being treated like this by Qilian, Lin Sun was quite touched and enjoyed it. With a solemn expression, he said, How can I retreat in the face of a great disaster? Don't worry, I won't implicate you. Everyone was in the same boat, and Lin Sun still needed Ko Xing and the others to help him get to Dongxing boundary. At such a time, Lin Sun naturally wouldn't stand idly by. Qilian frowned and was about to say something when a sharp cry suddenly sounded in the distance. The sound was like a sharp blade rubbing against the ground, causing goosebumps to appear on many people's skin and a piercing pain in their souls. There was no doubt that this was a kind of soul attack. Chapter 951. In the gray mist in the distance, dense palm-sized ghost-winged soul moths were like black clouds that blotted out the sky, and they pressed down on the void. Sharp hisses reverberated in the world and acted directly on people's souls. They were filled with an astonishing tearing and penetrating force, and they were extremely terrifying. They were wrapped in the gray mist and rushed towards the treasured ship where Lin Sun and the others were. Boom! Ko Xing and the others didn't hesitate to attack, and a series of attacks swept out like a divine rain of light and spread towards the distant void. The momentum was extremely shocking, but the effect was shocking. The ghost-winged soul moths were still rushing over, and no matter how dense and powerful the attacks were, they couldn't stop them at all. Instead, they were easily passed through by them. Only a small part of the ghost-winged soul moths were crushed and turned into powder, but compared to the army of ghost-winged soul moths that blotted out the sky and the earth, the casualties were almost negligible. This was absolutely a terrible and depressing thing. These damned things were too strange, and ordinary combat methods were completely ineffective against them. These are the ghost-winged soul moth. Their bodies are formed by soul power, and they survive by devouring the soul fragments of powerhouses. Be careful, Miss Lu reminded. As she spoke, she turned her white hand, and a string of 9 bells appeared in the palm of her hand. Each of them seemed to be polished from purple glass, and their surface was carved with ancient patterns of flowers, birds, insects, fish, mountains, rivers, earth, and latitude. The 9 bells were strung together by a mottled red string with scorch marks. As soon as they appeared, they emitted a melodious tinkling sound that drifted between the heaven and the earth. Whoosh! One could clearly see circles of resplendent purple sound waves spreading out, transforming into tens of thousands of sword shadows in the void, whistling out in a dense manner. Every sword shadow showed a kind of magnificent purple color, and they were peerlessly fierce and coiled with the power of Tao insight. They were completely derived from pure sound waves. At this moment, thousands of sword shadows flashed out together like thousands of swords bursting out. The scene was extremely spectacular, and it had a kind of shocking power. Boom! In an instant, numerous holes were instantly pierced through the army of ghost-winged soul moths that were like black clouds that covered the heavens and the earth, and countless ghost-winged soul moths were annihilated on the spot before their bodies exploded into pieces and transformed into gray mist that dispersed into the surroundings. Ko Xing and the others were stunned, and they were shocked in their hearts. A string of glistening violet bells actually emanated such terrifying lethality, and this had completely exceeded their imagination. Even Lin Sun was surprised at this moment. Then, he realized that the string of bells in Miss Li's hand was definitely a set of musical treasures. It might even be a set of divine weapons. Divine weapons were forged from divine materials and controlled by the energy of one's soul. They possessed unfathomable might, and they were even rarer and more precious than imperial weapons. Interesting. This Miss Li's background is probably extraordinary. However, for some unknown reason, she needs to cross the boundary river to head to the East Victory World. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Hua la la, the purple bells collided with each other, making a sweet, tinkling sound. Circles of sound ripples spread out, or evolved into substantial sword chi, or turned into magical secret attacks. Although the lethality was amazing, the number of ghost-winged soul moths was too large. They were like dark clouds, covering the sky and the earth, as if they could never be killed. Ko Xing and the other explorers dared not neglect and attacked with all their strength. They all knew that once they couldn't stop the attack of the ghost-winged soul moths, they were doomed to be wiped out this time. Something's wrong. Lin Sun was about to attack when he suddenly noticed something wrong. In the depths of the army of ghost-winged soul moths, there was an extremely terrible breath, which seemed to be in control of everything like a king. Although the other party hid extremely secretly, Lin Sun was still able to locate it under the coverage of his huge spiritual awareness. Sure enough, at the same time when Lin Sun found this scene, in the depths of the army of ghost-winged soul moths, a resounding roar suddenly sounded, shaking the void in this area violently. The power of this sound wave alone was enough to shock a large number of masters to death. Fortunately, the treasure ship had the protection of Miss Li's purple bells. The spreading purple sound wave effectively dissolved the impact, so that Ko Xing and the other explorers were not injured. Be careful, everyone! There's a Moth King here. Miss Lu also discovered it, and her face suddenly became extremely serious. In the depths of the army of ghost-winged soul moths in the distance, a silver creature appeared. Its eyes were as bright as blood diamonds, emitting a demonic and frightening luster. Through the gray mist, it swept towards the treasure ship. It was very terrifying. Although it was only the size of a palm, the aura it emitted was like that of a real king. Its wings flapped, spreading silver soul power sound waves, and clashed with the power of the purple bells in Miss Li's hand. Whoosh! Miss Li's figure flashed and rose into the sky. A string of purple bells was controlled by her with all her strength, causing her entire body to be coiled in shimmering purple divine radiance. She had no choice but to fight the Moth King, otherwise, everyone on the treasure ship was bound to suffer. Everyone, the situation is dangerous. We must fight with all our might. As for success or failure, it all depends on the will of the heavens. Miss Lu sighed lightly. The expressions of Ko Xing and the others were heavy to the extreme. This was a great calamity, and it even caused them to feel despair. If they fought with all they had, then perhaps they could obtain a trace of hope for survival, but if they didn't, then they would die for sure. Rumble! In merely a short moment, the ghost-winged soul moths charged over like a tide and charged onto the treasure ship. It was also at this moment that Ko Xing and the others realized how terrifying these ancient variant beings were. All of them were extremely ferocious and fearless, and they directly attacked one's soul. They lived by devouring the soul fragments of fallen experts, and the memories and inheritances contained within the soul fragments would be refined and grasped by them, causing them to be extremely terrifying. It would be easy to deal with if there were merely 2 or 3 of them, but now they surged over like a tide, and they were simply like locusts, causing them to feel despair. Ah! Screams rang out. The defense of the treasure ship was broken. No matter how a female strongman resisted, she was instantly covered by a swarm of ghost-winged soul moths. In just a moment, there was only a complete corpse left on the ground, and her soul had already been devoured. This made Ko Xing and the others so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The female strongman was not weak, with the cultivation of Tao Insight Realm. But at the moment of contact, she died. Everyone be careful. You must protect your soul. Qilian shouted, reminding others that the reason why the female strongman died just now was that her soul was attacked, which made her react a bit slower. Lin Sun originally wanted to rescue her, but it was too late, because there were too many ghost-winged soul moths. They came from all directions, and even he was besieged. These damned things! Lin Sun ran the meditating magic. No matter how many kinds of soul attacks hit him, they couldn't hurt him at all. Moreover, when he used the ultimacy of Paleo's roar and ran it in his fist, he immediately received an incredible effect. Groups of ghost-winged soul moths died in an instant. No! Not far from Lin Sun, a man screamed in horror. He was dodging crazily, and he was about to die. Swish! A snow-white broken blade flashed and strangled all the ghost-winged soul moths around the man. Escaping from death made the man feel relieved and grateful. But before he could thank Lin Sun had already rushed to the other side. Boom! On the treasure ship, the ghost-winged soul moths hissed and launched an all-out attack. The situation was extremely critical, which made Ko Xing and the others in a precarious situation. Because these ancient mutants were really strange. They were completely transformed by soul power, and ordinary fighting means couldn't kill them at all. Although the soul power of Ko Xing and the others was not bad, they lacked the method of soul fighting, which made them fall into a passive position as soon as the battle started. Kill! Lin Sun's killing intent was aroused. He moved on the treasure ship with Ice Drake step. Wherever he passed, groups of ghost-winged soul moths were killed like paper. They couldn't stop him at all. At the same time, the broken blade flashed and was controlled by Lin Sun's soul to save Ko Xing and the others. Lin Sun couldn't tolerate Ko Xing and the others being killed. He still needed Ko Xing and the others to guide him to the Dongxing boundary on the other side. Soon, Ko Xing and the others were shocked. Only then did they realize that the spiritual celestial master named Lin Xia, who followed them this time, was showing great power at this moment. He killed his opponents with irresistible force, as if he was in an unstoppable state. This kid is actually a hidden master. Qi Lian's charming peach blossom eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Good! Some explorers shouted. In this short period of time, Lin Sun had saved many of them, which made them excited and surprised. However, Lin Sun's action was like poking a hornet's nest. Many ghost-winged soul moths nearby began to gather, and then rushed towards Lin Sun together to end his life. Boom! Lin Sun stretched out his hand and clapped. A sea of fire spread out, and burning stars exploded one after another, turning into the profound power of Paleo's roar. This was the combination of fire-refining Star River method and Paleo's roar. In the void, where the sea of fire spread out, hundreds and thousands of ghost-winged soul moths were incinerated in an instant and disappeared. The lethality was astonishing. To others, the soul attack might be extremely terrifying, but to Lin Sun, whose soul power had already reached the level of divine flower gathering, it was no threat at all. Whether it was Paleo's roar or the broken blade, they were both natural restraints on these ancient creatures formed by soul power. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun was like a sharp knife, invincible and unparalleled. His strength was in a mess. Ko Xing and the others had long been shocked speechless. How was this a spiritual celestial master proficient in probing acupoints? He was clearly a peerless master. Previously, they had all underestimated this young man named Lin Xia. At this moment, even Miss Lu, who was fighting with the Moth King, couldn't help but show a hint of surprise. But soon, she didn't have time to think too much. The power of the Moth King was too terrifying, making her feel incomparably pressured. She didn't dare to be distracted. At the same time, Lin Sun, who was charging forward, frowned imperceptibly. This won't do. There are too many of these things. It's impossible to kill them all in a short time. This isn't the way. Thinking of this, he looked at the Moth King who was fighting with Miss Lu in the distant void. Chapter 952. The Moth King's whole body was silver, which made it look different from the others. It had the majesty of a king. Moreover, it mastered the secret method of divine soul. The sound wave attack it released could evolve into different magical powers, which was extremely amazing. If it weren't for the string of purple bells in Miss Li's hand, which specialized in restraining this kind of divine soul power, she would have been defeated long ago. Even so, her situation at the moment was not very optimistic. The power of the Moth King was too terrible. The sound wave was like a tide, covering the sky and the earth. There was silver brilliance everywhere, shattering the void in this area. It's up to you. If you can seize it, it will be enough to let you advance to the next stage. This is a rare opportunity, Lin Sun said in his heart. At the same time, the spirit-eating bugs that Lin Sun had nurtured in his sea of consciousness with the secluded star bug mastery woke up from their deep sleep. Hearing Lin Sun's order, these rice-grain-sized spirit-eating bugs became extremely excited and cheered. Whoosh! Whoosh! In an instant, they rushed out silently through the void and rushed to the Moth King who was fighting with Miss Lu in the distance. At this moment, Lin Sun covered the spirit-eating bugs with his spiritual awareness. He keenly noticed that the Moth King seemed to be startled and let out a sharp hissing. Spirit-eating bugs! Damn it! You have already died. An obscure roar spread from the Moth King, which could only be heard by the spirit-eating bugs. It seemed to be extremely afraid. It abandoned Miss Lu without hesitation, flapped its silver wings, and fled. This caused Miss Lu to be stunned and confused. At the same time, Lin Sun was also a little surprised. He didn't expect that the spirit-eating insect, which was only in the first stage and was just a larva, could make the Moth King so afraid that it fled before the fight started. Obviously, the spirit-eating bugs were the natural enemies of the ghost-winged soul moths. Lin soon ignored this and let the 9 spirit-eating bugs chase after the Moth King, while he continued to kill other ghost-winged soul moths. At this time, the situation on the field had obviously begun to change. With the escape of the Moth King, the overwhelming army of ghost-winged soul moths began to become chaotic, as if an army had lost control. This suddenly relieved a lot of pressure on Ko Xing and others. They were also surprised. What happened to the aggressive army of ghost-winged soul moths? Crash! At this moment, Miss Lu had already returned to the treasure ship. She used the purple bell to help Lin Sun and the others kill the ghost-winged soul moths. In this way, the ghost-winged soul moth army began to show signs of collapse, and their lives were harvested in droves. Ko Xing and the other explorers cheered excitedly. They'd originally felt hopeless, yet never had they imagined that the situation would actually turn around and allow them to see the hope of survival. Lin Sun also breathed a sigh of relief and murmured in his heart that if he had known this, he would have sent spirit-eating bugs to kill the Moth King directly. At the same time, Miss Li's dignified look eased a lot. She glanced thoughtfully at Lin Sun, who was not far away, and then suddenly murmured, "I didn't expect that there would be spirit-devouring insects in this world. Thanks to them, I was saved from danger this time. You also know spirit-eating insects?" Lin Sun was a little surprised. These are the top 10 exotic insects in the ancient times. They once devoured the souls of real saints. They're extremely terrifying. How could I not know about them? Miss Lu said softly, however, as far as I know, spirit-eating insects are the guardian insects of the ancient Star Nether Imperial clan. They were annihilated long ago in the ancient times. I never thought that I'd see them again today. Lin Sun was shocked. This seemingly sickly girl obviously knew a lot of secrets. She even knew about the Star Nether Imperial clan, which seemed too unusual. What was her identity? "Child, may I ask if these spirit-eating insects are raised by you?" Suddenly, Miss Li's voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears. "Yes." Lin Sun was calm. He knew that these things couldn't be hidden from Miss Li's eyes at all. Hiding it would instead make her suspicious of him. "I see." Miss Lu nodded and didn't probe further. She was very smart and could tell at a glance that Lin Sun didn't want to talk about this issue. "Child, these insects are extremely ferocious. If you don't raise them properly, it's extremely easy for you to suffer a backlash. Please be careful," she reminded him. From this, it could be seen that Miss Lu might not have seen spirit-eating insects before, but she knew them like the back of her hand. "Thank you." Lin Sun was even more certain that this woman had an extraordinary background. Seeing Lin Sun being so calm, Miss Lu was startled. She seemed to realize something and laughed at herself. "It seems that I've worried too much. Child seems to have an extraordinary relationship with the Star Nether Imperial clan. You've already mastered the method of raising these insects." Lin Sun didn't expect that Miss Li's insight would be so sharp. He didn't say much, but she had already guessed some things. But until now, he couldn't figure out this woman's background at all. This inevitably made Lin Sun a little wary. "Child, although we didn't have much interaction in the past, we're in the same boat now. This is fate. I don't have any malice towards Child, so I hope Child doesn't worry about anything." It had to be said that Miss Lu was absolutely intelligent. She seemed to have seen through Lin Sun's thoughts and couldn't help but explain to him via voice transmission. She seemed very sincere. "After we resolve this danger, I'll be happy to have a chat with Child." Lin Sun smiled and nodded in agreement. She was very honest, but Lin Sun had to admit that she was definitely the most intelligent woman he had ever seen. After a quarter of an hour, the battle came to an end. In the end, the leaderless army of ghost-winged soul moths collapsed and disappeared into the depths of the vast river. Ko Xing, green-faced assassin, and Qi Lian were all relieved. They felt a sense of joy after surviving a disaster. Although their bodies didn't suffer any injuries in this battle, their souls were impacted and they were more or less injured. In addition, 2 of their companions had unfortunately died. This was something that couldn't be helped. The situation just now was too dangerous, and casualties were inevitable. In fact, if it weren't for Lin Sun and Miss Lu, they would all have suffered. It's all thanks to your help that we were able to avert danger this time. We won't dare to forget this life-saving grace. Ko Xing cupped his hands and thanked them gratefully. The others did the same, especially the way they looked at Lin Sun, which was completely different from before. In the previous battle, Lin Sun's unstoppable and invincible posture had caused a great shock and impact to them. They were all ruthless stubble who lived on the edge of a knife all year round and had rich experience. They knew very well that Lin Sun was definitely not as simple as a spiritual celestial master, but they didn't expose or ask. They understood that Lin Sun might have hidden reasons for hiding his identity. Since that was the case, it was obviously inappropriate for them to ask further. "Child, would you like to have a drink with me now?" Not long after, Miss Lu invited Lin Sun. "My pleasure," Lin Sun agreed with a smile. He was also very curious about what kind of person this girl was. Immediately, the 2 entered a room in the treasure ship. Seeing this, Ko Xing and the others sensibly went to do their own business. Although the threat brought by the ghost-winged soul moth had been resolved, no one dared to be careless on this extremely dangerous border river. And as they went deeper, the dangers they encountered along the way would only become more and more terrifying. Hundreds of miles away from the treasure ship, the river was surging and gray mist was rising, drowning the heaven and earth, appearing strange and horrifying. In the depths of the gray mist, a pile of white bones in the shape of a beehive emerged. At this moment, an incomparably shrill cry resounded from the pile of white bones. It was a moth king with silver wings, but at this moment it was firmly stuck by 9 spirit-eating bugs, who were nibbling its body bit by bit. In the process, no matter how it struggled, it couldn't get rid of them. It seemed violent, frightened, desperate, and helpless. In just a moment, the Moth King was eaten up completely. The 9 spirit-eating bugs were glowing, their rice grain-like bodies flowing with strange black brilliance. Then, their bodies actually cracked inch by inch, crack, crack. In the end, they underwent a metamorphosis, shedding their original bodies and turning into a kind of silvery white color. They were smaller than before, as inconspicuous as sesame seeds. But looking carefully, their bodies could be said to be perfect, flowing with a strange silvery white luster, giving people a sense of holiness. This was the second stage of the spirit-eating bug's evolution. At this stage, the spirit-eating bug was like being reborn from fire, and it was enough to easily devour the divine soul of a great practitioner at the reincarnation development stage. Moreover, if it was unexpected, even a half-step to the king realm would be at a disadvantage. However, when the metamorphosis was completed, an even more shocking scene happened. One of the spirit-eating bugs suddenly flashed to its companion on the side, and in a strong and overbearing manner, it instantly devoured the companion. Almost at the same time, the other spirit-eating bugs were restless, as if they felt uneasy and wanted to escape. But after the spirit-eating bug that launched the attack first let out a strange cry, the other spirit-eating bugs seemed to have accepted their fate, crouching there and daring not to move. Then, the spirit-eating bugs were devoured one by one, and finally there was only one spirit-eating bug left. It was still the size of a sesame seed, and it didn't seem to have changed much, but the color of its body became much deeper and more restrained, like a silver-cold metal. There was more indescribable majesty all over its body, like a young bug king, showing its loftiness for the first time. It stood in the void, as if hesitating about something and pacing back and forth. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun, who had just sat in the room and was about to talk with Miss Lu, looked gloomy. At this time, there was a sudden fluctuation in his sea of consciousness, which made him instantly understand what happened to the 9 spirit-eating bugs. "Come back!" He gave an order with his divine awareness in a tough manner. The spirit-eating bug hesitated, seeming to be a little impatient and unable to make a decision.